Okay, Mr. Stern, can you see the agenda?
I can, Mr. Cleaver, thank you. Shall we proceed?
Yes.
Just a quick note, there was an executive session on April 12th at 5:15 for personnel and legal issues, and it was an executive session this evening concerning personnel and contracts. So I just wanted to make sure that we were in compliance by announcing both of those executive sessions. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order at 7:02. Roll call, Ms. Virginia.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Present.
Mr. Richard Belt, Mr. Richard Belt, absent. Mr. David Bradley,
Here, and I think Larry should correct the announcement he made. The executive session only entailed contract negotiations and did not get into any of the personnel or legal issues.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Present.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Here.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Here.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Here,
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Here.
and Mr. Larry Stern.
Here.
This is Richard Belts. I am here. I'm having some technical difficulties.
Ms. Partino, did you hear Mr. Belt?
Yes, I recorded him present.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Cleaver, you'd like to proceed with the presentation from PFM, please?
Yes, we do have some individuals to present from PFM. I will bring them on so they could share their screen. I know at our finance committee meeting, it was requested that they come to a board meeting and answer questions that we may have. So this is just a follow-up from that meeting. So if you could just bear with me 1 minute and I'll get them so they're able to begin their presentation.
Good evening. This is
Yes.
Carly with PFM. Can you hear me?
Yes, Carly, is Brian or Allison joining?
I believe Brian was supposed to be joining.
Yes, Brian is. Can you hear us, Brian? Brian, are you able
Thank
to?
you, Ed.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I will.
Yeah, I'm on as well, Carly.
All right. Do you need us to share our screen, or do you have copies of the presentation, or would you?
If you're able to share yours.
Perfect. Not a problem. I think I might need privileges to do that.
Are you able to should be able to share it now?
Yes, thank you.
Yep, sorry about that.
No problem. All right. You guys can see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So good evening. My name is Carly and I'm with PFM. I'm a colleague of Zach Williard, who has presented with you guys many times before. And then Brian Bradley with RBC, who's also part of the finance team, is here tonight to run through the presentation. We have touched base with you guys, I believe, right around this time, maybe a little later than this time last year, to discuss a restructuring option for the district regarding some cash flow relief in the next 2 fiscal years. So this is kind of just a refresh of that. We were asked to come back and do that. So the first page here just kind of shows where interest rates are at. The top is just our historical MMD curve, and the ones we're really focused on are these bottom two here. The middle graph kind of shows the downward trend since 1993, kind of showing how rates have lowered. And then this little box here is blown up on the bottom and just gives an overview of what the last year and a half of rates have looked like. As you can see, the spike was right around April last year with COVID, and then everything's kind of decreased and we've steadied out, and we are about on par with where rates were around this time last year when we were talking to you guys about this restructuring. The next page we have here just is an overview of your debt portfolio. So this should be familiar to you. The top portion of it is your debt service requirements prior to state reimbursement. As you can see, you guys have a run rate of about $4 million in annual debt service. The bottom portion here being your local effort after state reimbursement. Column 16 shows your net debt service. And for today's discussion purposes, we are going to be focusing on the TD Bank note and the Geo Bonds Series A of 2015 for the restructuring portion. We scroll to the next page here. This it's kind of a bullet point page, and this is really, that gives an overview as to what we're doing. Like I said, Brian, Zach, and I were here last year to discuss doing this for you guys. So we kind of just refreshed the scenario, and what we're showing you tonight would provide short-term budgetary relief for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, and that in turn would allow the district to take those savings and build up their general fund reserve levels. We have identified a couple maturities out of the 2014 note that I previously mentioned and the 2015 A bonds to restructure for the purpose of those savings in 22 and 23. We would essentially refund those, and we're going to push those out throughout the debt portfolio and extend the life of them to be able to create that lower reduction of debt service for the next 2 years. It would be, from what I understand, part of the district's multi-year recovery plan, which would help you rebuild your reserve levels. And a really important note to this restructuring is that even though your debt service is going to lower for the next 2 years, that the district does not lower the approximately $4 million budget that they have annually to accommodate that. Otherwise, it doesn't really build up the reserves, and that kind of defeats what the purpose of the restructuring would be. So that it's really important to continue to budget the $4 million, realize the savings and the difference between that budgeted million and what would actually come in with this restructuring, and that would allow you to build up your reserve levels. It also puts you in a better, on a path to really get your credit rating back to where it needs to be. I know the rating agencies look for general fund reserve levels, and it would be one step of the multi-step plan for the recovery for the district. And then the bottom table here just shows the certain maturities from each year that we are considering for this restructuring. We would be refunding the 2021 and 2022 maturity of the 2014 note. It's past the call date, and they just make it's the most efficient maturities that we could refund, given that it's past the call date, and they are coming to mature in the next year or two out of where we're looking to create the deficit. And then we'd also be refunding the 2021 and 2022 maturity of the 2015 bonds, as well as the in-between interest payment in 2022 as well. I can stop here, Brian, if you have anything to add, let me know, or if we have any questions on this page before we move on.
No, I would just like to add, before any questions, just the reason why we chose those series, the 2014s in particular, they're currently callable. It gives us an opportunity to refinance them on a tax exempt basis versus a taxable basis. And obviously anything you do on a tax exempt basis provides you with a lower interest rate. With respect to the other series, and in particular, there's 2 series of QZABs outstanding. You're currently paying 0% on one of those series and 1.5% on the other. So that's kind of the decision matrix of why we chose the series that we chose. They're the most cost effective for the district.
Any questions before we move on to the analysis portion of it?
I have one.
Sure.
Am I provided the floor? Who's running the meeting? Sorry.
Yeah, feel free to
Okay.
ask us anything. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So retiring these callable bonds, what was the total on these bonds, and why don't we just pay them off? Why don't we just use the same fiscal responsibility to reduce the amount that we're spending to less than we're taking in so that we can pay off these callable bonds that are no longer needed and costing this district money? I mean, wouldn't that be a more financially responsible path given the district's multi-year history of overspending and the reductions in their Moody's reports for our credit rating?
So
Thank you.
that seems like a question with regards to policy than it is with regards, but there's 4 million outstanding of that bond issue.
And we're trying to save $4 million in cash flow because the district, let's face it, it's spent more than it can afford and is continuing down the path of trying to spend more than it can afford. I agree it's a definitely a morality issue related to the board itself, but you're trying to put $4 million ahead by not making the minimum payments for a couple of years, and then not only having to pay and push them forward for 20 some years and paying millions of dollars more in excess interest. It would make sense that if we have the ability to squeeze $4 million out of the budget, we should be paying off these bonds that are callable. I don't know why, again, back to policy, why some fool would have made non-callable bonds at the time when the interest rates were so low, but I think they were just desperate. But the short question is, wouldn't it make more sense to get the goal that we're aiming for, to have the district spend less than it takes in so that it can build a reservoir and pay off these high interest notes? Isn't that more financially sound of advice from PFM than just to kick the can down the road? Shouldn't that option be on the table as one of the things that PFM is advising to this government agency? I mean, you pick these 2 bonds because they're callable.
I mean, well, they're callable. Oh, sorry, Brian.
No. I was going to say, so I think we're kind of talking about 2 different issues here.
Yeah.
What PFM and RBC was tasked with was, is there a way for us through restructuring some debt to provide some cash flow relief over the next 2 years in order to build up our fund balance? If you're talking about coming up with, to pay off those bonds that you're talking about, Mr. Bradley, that's $4.1 million outstanding. that's really only going to give you a relief of $400,000 per year. I think what we were tasked with was to look at an opportunity to save more than that over the near term in order to increase that fund balance, which is the huge structural issue that Moody's points to with respect to multiple downgrades that the district has undertaken over the past, I think, 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go back to the beginning. Who on this district government asked PFM to be that was the goal? I mean, how was that the goal that you were tasked with? Did the board ask you that, or did the administration ask you that? Was that, I remember originally you guys were talking with Patty Denicola, our old business manager. Where was that the goal? I mean, let's face it, ask the right question, you get the right answer. But I think that was the wrong question. And I just want to ask, who asked that question? That sounds irresponsible.
Mr. Bradley, we
Mr.
discussed.
Krieger, I'm asking Brian. I'm asking Brian. I'd like Brian to answer. He mentioned that it was tasked to him at PFM to go down a path where we could free up monies by pushing the debt down the road so that we could help refund or reestablish our fund balance because it was being consumed by our district irresponsibly to the point where it doesn't meet the standard and therefore also causes us not only havoc with PDE, but also our Moody's rating. So I'd rather have Mr. Brian answer the phone, or I'm sorry, Mr. Brian Bradley answer that question, not the administration.
So that's fair. I just want to make sure I have something clear, Mr. Bradley. I don't work at PFM. I work at RBC Capital Markets. And I think the question was simply last year, Patty had asked us and just simply asked if we wanted to restructure some debt, what is the amount of savings that we can come up with in the next 2 fiscal years, the maximum amount of savings we can come up with in the next 2 fiscal years. And that's quite simply how the conversation started. And I just want to clarify, RBC and PFM, it's a decision for the board. We're not pushing the board one way or another. This is the way the math works out with respect to the current market and your existing debt. And this is how much cash flow can simply be freed up.
And I agree. It's one of the methods that you can.
And
you
just,
can
I'm
skin
sorry,
the cat, right?
just one other thing, just real quick. I know you opined on PDE. This plan complies with all regulations of PDE, DCD, all that good stuff. It completely complies with all the rules and regulations of the state.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the goal for any district is to hold a certain amount of fund balance. The fact that our district consumed an excess of fund balance and the Auditor General chastised us, admonished us for not only doing it, but not following budgetary procedures and all the PDE procedures. I firmly respect that we are now trying to follow the law because some of us on the board are actually reading it. But the point that I'm making is the question was asked apparently to PFM. How do we get out of the mess they're in? And the problem I'm watching is that they picked these 2 series 14 and 15, which are the only ones that are callable. And given the current situation, I agree that might be the way to play these pieces. However, it also shows that very shortly, we have some very escalating interest rates on other debt. So kicking the can down the road just corners this district again further because, like you said, you're not going to change the amount that's in the budget for debt service. But you got to also make sure that this district doesn't spend it or there's no benefit. There's already a $2 million loss. It'll be even worse if they consume those dollars. And at the same time, since you're only trying to get to $4 million, that's 10% of this budget. We should be able to do that without going past these extremes where you're kicking a can down the road to save $4 million. We're spending $2 million. That's not a very good return on investment, in my opinion. But I was just wondering, my original question was, why were they tasked with this path? I think it's the wrong path. And then secondly is, and it apparently was Patty. And then the next question was, they picked these two bonds because they're the only two that are available for us to be refinanced, it sounds like. Is that correct?
They are the two most cost efficient. So in 2017, with the Tax Cuts and Job Act, advanced refundings, meaning you refinance a bond more than 90 days before the call date, they were eliminated. You can no longer do that on a tax exempt basis. So tax exempt rates, we all know, are lower than taxable rates. So the plan of finance is to try to issue as much on a tax exempt basis as possible because it's the most cost effective. And that's simply why these series were chosen. Your QZABs are 0%. You'd never refinance that. Your other 2014 QZABs are 1.5%.
I agree.
We're not going to touch those. The 2014 note is 2.16%. And again, the 2015 A's, they have an average rate of 5% on it. So we're refinancing some of those. And just with respect to the rating, I think the long-term plan is to get that rating up because in 2022, 2023, and 2024, the vast majority of the district's debt would be able to be refinanced over the next, 3 years. So it is in the district's best interest to obviously get that rating up. The higher the rating, the lower the interest rates the market demands from the district. And I think, and I can't opine to that, but that I believe is the obvious long-term plan. And that's what this restructuring is obviously a part of.
But at the same time, those very large bonds are going to have an escalating rate. What are those rates going to be hitting in those 22, 23, and 24 years currently? I mean, that's the sort of Damocles that's on top of us right now, right? I mean, we got an escalating interest rate on some really large debt.
No, those rates are fixed for the life of the issue. The district has the option to refinance that at any time. And so your debt that Carly had alluded to on, I'm sorry, what page, Carly? Page 2?
Yes, page 2.
That debt is fixed for the life of the issue. I'm not sure why you're.
We had a teaser rate for the first couple of years, and then the bond actually shows a 5% interest rate for years moving forward.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It appears that the bond issues for the general obligation bonds had an interest rate of nearly 5%. Look at the Series A 2015s.
Yep.
Yes.
That's correct.
And they are not callable until when?
2023.
Right. So we understand that we're captured by this large financial obligation, but to take a couple $100,000 of payments off of the 2014 series bonds in exchange for spending $2 million throughout the next 15, 20 years, putting it on the backs of the community, doesn't make sense. If we literally put the same amount of money into our general fund through firms' financial management, we wouldn't have that restructuring costs, the $2 million, and we're at a relatively low rate only for a couple more years. It's not like they're variable. The 2014 and the QZABs, they're all fixed as well.
That's correct. Everything is fixed. So
my real question,
really,
so my ultimate question was the puzzle you were given was a question that, or not you, but maybe it's a Carly question. The puzzle that PFM was given is, what's the easiest way, even if it costs us more money, to get out of this situation, when the advice of counsel should have been geared more closely to the idea, what is the best way to restructure debt with the reduction in interest rates in the current environment without that costing us more money? I mean, that's at the end of the day, when you restructure debt and try to refinance, you're trying to have a net sum payments that is lower than you started. You don't want a net sum payments that's higher than you started. And even if you can't physically afford to make your minimum payment, you should be able to at least, I mean, our district can make the minimum payment currently, but you're sitting in a situation where not only are they going to put $4 million aside that they can't touch, which has not been the habit of this district, but they're going to be penalized $2 million to do it over the life of this term. So was anyone ever given PFM that directive to say, how can we restructure our debt where the net result would be a reduction in cash outlay through the next 2045 year date? And how do we reduce that amount so that our community can save money, not be spending more money for a problem that they already have?
Well, Mr. Bradley, I mean, that, and I know Brian alluded to this earlier. This is something to help you guys out for the next 2 years, just so you can get to the path that the rating agencies look at. I mean, Brian talked about your debt being callable in the upcoming years, and with all of those high rates on the remaining 2015 A's that we wouldn't restructure, the better the rating the district has, the lower the tax exempt interest rate will be when they come to refinance them, which will in turn be refinancing a large portion of your debt and lowering your debt service throughout the curve through 2044. So this is just part of a plan to get you guys in a better position that when you have the time to come to market to refinance all of those series that are currently outstanding that you can't touch because they're not callable, it's setting you up for a much better success point at that rate.
I agree. You're going to go a couple steps backwards to hopefully go a step forward is the plan here. But did anyone at all even look at or run the numbers to say, is there a way to reduce the total sum of debt and total sum of interest that, let's face it, this government agency irresponsibly threw on the backs of this community? And to the point that, like you said, they're so far behind that now you're offering a $2 million pay me solution to buy a better credit rating, when in result, the best way to get a better credit rating would be to be fiscally responsible, where the budget is showing a net positive cash flow, where some dollars up to a couple percent can be put aside in the general fund so that it can be there when you have issues, not spending $8 million willy-nilly on a stadium per se. That was done debt-free on an asset, used with cash out of that general fund. I mean, these were very bad decisions that this district made. But to make another bad decision moving forward where it costs you money to fix those problems and put that onto the backs not only of the current community, but you're talking a couple decades forward, which is the backs of our children. So
Mr. Bradley, what you're saying is
did anyone
exactly
look at the obligation to say, PFM, is there a way to reduce the total sum of payments with our current situation? And is there a better way to get our rating up rather than just buy it? That's my question.
Part of the plan is exactly what you're saying, is being fiscally responsible, making sure we don't spend more than we're bringing in everything else, but also including a way to improve that credit rating. They can't be done in a silo. It has to be done as a group. And Brian and Carly, please correct me if I'm saying it incorrectly.
We agree,
what you're
Mr.
saying
Klaver,
is,
but currently the budget you have is a minus $1.2 million. Wait, the budget you currently have, the budget that should have been done months ago, but the budget you currently have
Mr. Bradley,
is $1.2 million short.
Let me finish.
I know, but you did finish. You said you're going to try to be
Mr.
responsible.
Bradley, again, yes, I muted you because I'm tired of being interrupted. The plan is what we are addressing here. Is how do we look at, doing a group of activities to help us increase our credit rating and to help us improve the situation that our district is in and continue this climb out of where we're at. So what you're saying is correct, but it also needs to go with other actions. Doing what you're requesting isn't going to help with their credit rating. We still got to show that we are, increasing our fund balance, that we are increasing, our fiscal responsibility, and also that, we're not spending more than we bring in, and that everything is lining up, because that has not been the case, over the last several years. So this is the part of the plan, and this is where PFM comes in. And that's why they continue to say that this is not extra money that the district could spend on something else. It needs to be there to help us in the next couple of years when we do go to refinance, when we're eligible, to help us get out of the current situation and to realign some of our debt payments. So part of what you're saying is absolutely correct, Mr. Bradley, but it's also part of a bigger plan.
But you're making this assumption that the district is going to be financially responsible going forward with the same people at the helm. And as of today, April 26th, the most recent budget that we have, you are already showing a budget deficit of $1.2 million. And last year's budget, that was also a deficit of close to that amount, resulted in loss of transportation, which also then resulted in loss of students, which also resulted in increased costs for charter schools. These are all moving parts. We fully agree. I'm just asking the question to PFM. Did anyone ask the relevant question, not how do I spend a couple $1 million to buy a better rating and buy bond insurance and all this other stuff that goes involved with these, and ask the real question, which is, what can I do between today and let's say 2024 to make sure that when these other bonds come due, that we'll have a good credit rating without us spending money, but just acting in a professional, responsible, fiscally responsible manner. And I see that other people have their hand raised in the audience. They should also have an opportunity to speak, because these people did not have an opportunity to speak in the committee meeting where a lot of this should have been done. I apologize if this is longer, but we should have all had the chance to speak during that time. But my question is, Carly, no one asked that question apparently, right? You just went down this path of how much does it cost us to get the Band-Aid and get moving forward?
When we discussed with Patty, this is the route she wanted us to just take a look at and suggest for you guys as part of the plan to get your rating up. I think if we can, I would like to show the analysis page, and maybe Brian can walk us through.
Could we continue to make sure?
We have some other questions. We have some other questions in the audience, but at the same time, so the question was never asked. Since the question was asked,
Mr. Bradley,
you're interrupting me, sir.
Because they may answer,
I understand,
if they complete their presentation, they may be able to answer some of the questions.
I would agree, but I'm going to make the statement that.
So would you please continue?
Yeah, hold on a second. When we were talking, Carly,
Brian, sorry.
Yeah, Carly, when we were talking you just muted me again. Hold on. When
yes,
we were talking
please continue?
No, wait a second. When we were talking at the finance committee meetings, these questions were addressed. So why were they ignored and only going down this one path is why.
Mr. Bradley, we are bringing them back. Thank you. Please let them continue.
Well, you also have Barb.
Mr. Bradley, we will get to them, but we like them to continue, please.
Brian, do you want to walk through the numbers, or would you like me to?
You can walk through them, Carly.
Okay.
If that's all right.
So the goal, like we said, is to restructure in 22 and 23. So if you look at column 2, that's what your current local effort is. That's what it looks like. If you don't do anything, it stays the same, and that's what it would continue to be. And you'd make your debt service payments each year, and that would be that. Looking at what we're trying to do for you guys to provide budgetary relief in 22 and 23, the blue column, column 3, shows how much refunded local effort that we would restructure. It correlates to the chart on the page previously that I showed you of those a couple maturities that we're going to restructure. And then columns 4, 5, and 6 show taking those 2 maturities and extending them out and showing the debt service, the local effort addition that they would have. And you see how they're stretched out around towards the bottom portion of your debt, which is a little lower than what your current run rate is of just under $3 million. But the important part out of this is if you look at column 8, the 1.887 and the 1.242 would be your budgetary relief in 22 and 23 by pushing that debt out and keeping your budget the same at 4 million. So that's what you would have that you would be able to put into reserves. And it ends up being approximately 3 million, a little over 3 million that you guys would have there in savings. Now, column 8 also shows that it's going to cost a little bit throughout the life of the loan because you're pushing debt out. Therefore, it is a little more costly to do that. It would be a gross of approximately 2.2 million into savings, but if you were PV everything back, it's just shy of 700,000 of a PV cost given current market conditions when we set this up and ran through this. We also threw a chart in here, and this is kind of just the visual to show exactly what we're looking to do. The black dotted line is what your current debt service looks like. The blue would be the unrefunded portion that we don't touch, stays the same. And then you see here in 22 and 23, that's where your budgetary relief comes in. That's where your savings would be with those lowered debt service payments that you'd see in column 7 here. You'd go from paying about 3 million a year to only 1 million in 22 and just shy of 1.7 million in 23. And then in 2024, everything shoots right back up to just about where it was with the slight addition of the red, the yellow, and the orange, which correspond to the new restructuring local effort that you see above. So it would kind of set you right back up to your highest run rate of around 3.2 million annually. Brian, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that was a good summary. You know, PFM and RBC isn't here saying there isn't a cost. When you're scooping out that debt, there is going to be cost over the life of the issue. To answer, I just real quick going back, just to clarify, there are no current opportunities for this school district to do a traditional high to low refunding for economic savings based on your existing debt and the interest rates and the call date on your existing debt, plus with the, I think, 3 downgrades the schools, the districts received since 2018. You're currently at Baa1 negative outlook. Between your rating, the interest rates on your existing debt, and the call dates on the existing debt, there are no traditional refunding opportunities.
Correct.
But at the same time, Brian, you would respectfully submit that if we do nothing, we're going to save, according to this document, $2.2 million between now and 2045. If we don't do anything, if we stick to the debt we have, be fiscally responsible, and pay off the debt as soon as we can because it costs us interest, we'll have $2 million more to give to debt, and it won't be coming out of the local effort, which is our community.
Yeah, I mean, page 4 has the numbers. There is a cost over the life of the issue to do this. Yeah. There's a benefit in the near term to do that, and I think stopping short there, it's not for Carly or I to opine on board policy. This is a board decision. I think the long-term goal with respect to the plan was, again, to get that credit rating back up, and the higher the credit rating, the more beneficial these opportunities for refundings down the road to capture even more savings. I think that's a long-term plan, but that is for the board and administration to discuss.
Correct. And regretfully, the same board and administration that got them into this mess is the one still running the show. So I agree. I really appreciate you doing this work. I think that what I was trying to get at most importantly was that when you hire PFM to do a job, we should point them in a direction that there's a benefit, not just an ease level of saying, let's take $2 million from our community to make our lives easier by throwing $4 million in the pot so that we don't touch it this time, even though we had $13 million in the pot before and they spent it willy-nilly like drunk sailors.
I know there's
no
more to
fault
your
of yours, Brian. I appreciate it.
No, it's not something Carly and I can opine on. Obviously,
I agree.
We weren't members of the past or present board. We have no voting rights on the board. It's just we were asked if there's anything on the debt side, and again, there's no traditional opportunities, but there is a restructuring opportunity that the district and the board can undertake to free up some cash flow in the near term.
Thank you, Carly. I believe, is there more
No,
information?
No.
hold on. Just the timeline is
Okay,
the following one, and that would just be kind of the setup for this if this is something the board would want to consider to move forward with. And this is just an earliest timeline and nothing set in stone, and we could do it whatever suits the timing of the district.
okay.
Carly, my name is Larry Stern. I'd like to move back to that previous slide, and I want you to explain the block at the bottom where it says PV savings and costs. I know there's a $2.2 million end cost, but that does not include the deferral of the payments that are included for 6/30/2022 and 6/30/2023. Is that correct? Or how does that PV savings cost column at the bottom work out for us?
So column 8 is a gross savings column. So that is literally the difference between column 2, which is your current existing local effort, and column 7, which would be your proposed new local effort given the restructuring. To kind of look at things on an apples to apples basis, Brian, you can jump in. A better way of explaining this. We present value things back at a discount rate. Would be like the rate of the new yield that we would be doing for the new bonds, and by present valuing everything back to today, that's what it would be, or when this issue happens. That kind of gives you a better look at what it's actually costing to do this. So it'd be a $2.2 million cost on a gross level, but on present value savings, it would be just shy of 7. I don't know if there's a better way to explain that, Brian.
No, that's a correct way to explain it. We measure everything by a present value basis in the municipal community in our asset class whenever we undertake these refundings. It's been a rule of thumb established by the GFOA, feels like a lifetime ago, well before my time. So that's kind of how we judge the value of any sort of refinancing or restructuring the municipal space. It's by today's dollars. And that's what that $700,000 represents. It's today's dollars.
I believe Ms. Spinelli had a question too.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I have one question and one comment here. By pushing this debt out to the end, does that affect when they look at us for bond rating? In other words, I know we'll have more cash flow, but is extending our debt a negative when looked at?
Well, is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. So you're not the only issuer that's ever going or is considering a restructuring. So rating agencies they're much quicker to downgrade you than upgrade you. So I believe and maybe somebody from the administration can opine better, but this is part of a larger plan. So what they'd like to see, and what they'd really like to see is this coupled with some other initiatives by the board to get you back to a structural balance on the long term. If you just did this and did nothing, no, it's not going to help your credit rating. But if you do this and coupled with some other initiatives in order to get back to a structurally balanced budget, in the long term, it will potentially be viewed positively.
And what are those other things that need to be done?
I think this restructuring was part of some additional initiatives by the board and the administration. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, looking at that, and then also looking at, making sure that we're staying within our budgeted numbers, and keeping a closer eye on that, and keeping an eye on cash flow as well, and getting more information to the board so they're able to make decisions as well when it comes to, approving or not approving budgets.
So, Mr. Cleaver, those are the steps we've been taking in the last year or so.
Right.
So, coupled with those, this moves us forward.
Yeah, that's like I said, it's, this doesn't work in a silo. I mean, like they said, it's gotta, we gotta do this as a group plan, a group effort, to make sure that we're, going to be able to get that better credit rating when that time comes, because they're gonna want to see that. They want to see, of course, the fund balance is, something they always look to. They also look at, I want to say your two big costs are, personnel and insurance and those type of things, to see if you're keeping, steady, with those as well. And really, this is just part of that long range plan to, get us
Okay.
in a better situation. And so yes, this alone, like they said, and coupled with other things, because that was one of the things a year ago. We came back and we weren't really sure if people understood, like, this wasn't money just to to take. Okay, well, we want to go do another initiative somewhere down the line, a one-to-one initiative. So we're going to save this money and go purchase laptops. This is money to be set in that fund balance, to have that amount in there when it comes time to refinancing. Because if you do it and spend it, then and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, Carly, this plan is for nothing.
So if I can put this in kind of layman's terms, and you tell me if I'm wrong. If I were going to take out a loan to consolidate my credit card debt, I got to make sure I don't incur any more credit card debt, right?
Brian and Carly, did you hear that question?
Yes, Rita, you
Yeah.
can't incur more credit card debt, and currently you're in a situation where you're struggling to make the minimum payment because of
Mr.
your
Bradley,
past-
she's asking the individual.
I know, but I was helping her with this layman's
Well,
term.
Mr. Bradley, I don't want, Mr. David Bradley, I don't want your answer. I want Mr. Brian Bradley's answer.
So I would, yes, if you were to scoop out this debt, do some restructuring, and then borrow money and just fill that hole back in with some new money or more credit card debt, it won't be looked upon positively by the rating agencies.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, my other comment is, the reason we have you back was because the public had some questions, and I really think that the board has a lot of time to discuss this, and Mr. David Bradley has a lot of time to criticize whatever he wants to, but right now I think it's time for the public to comment, because that's what we brought you back for.
Okay.
We're going to turn it over to Barb Bose. Ms. Bose?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, my first question, and I don't know if PFM can answer this. On the 2014 bank loan, at the moment, our reimbursement from the state is about 48%. Will restructuring this debt affect that reimbursement rate?
No, it will not. You will still keep the same reimbursement rate on the remaining 2014 note. Some reimbursement gets factored into the restructuring that we would do with that piece, because there is already some reimbursement. So you would still be receiving an equal amount of state reimbursement on the new restructuring portion, but all of the maturities, 2023, I believe, through 2025, all of the reimbursement would stay exactly the same on them. Nothing would change other than just removing those two maturities and refinancing them in this restructuring.
All right, and the $2.2 million cost of doing this, is that all interest?
I believe so, yes. Most it is interest, with stretching interest out. The longer your loan is, the more interest over the life of the loan you would pay. I guess, Brian, you have a better way to explain that. It's almost like your house mortgage. It's a long loan. You're paying interest over it. The longer you have that loan outstanding, the more interest you would pay on it. So that's a
I
good way
just-
to put it, Brian.
I just didn't know if that included the cost of your cost for doing this.
Everything here is net. So this is at the end of the day when the issue's over. Everything's paid for. This is what you would be left with, bottom line at the end of the day, net of all cost.
Okay, because I just didn't know if the cost of doing this was factored in to that 2.2 million.
All the costs are factored in as well as state reimbursement.
Okay, now as far as Moody's and the credit rating goes, they also look at governance. And part of the reason we were downgraded was because we had poor fiscal practices by spending down the fund balance. It is concerning to me that the people that did that will be holding on to this money to help the fund balance. So it's more than just a fund balance that Moody's looks at. My concern is, because it makes no logical sense to me, that you can borrow your way out of debt, especially when you're adding costs. I understand that you can raise taxes to help cover those costs in the future, but is that really the fiscally responsible thing to do for this community? And that is one of my biggest concerns. The other is on that 2015 A bond, the current interest rate through 2022 is only 2%. In 2023, it jumps to 5%. So any money we get back from that particular bond to help with cash flow is going to be paid back at a higher rate than what we're paying now. And that's my concern. Because to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that's, so to the point that you're making, that's kind of the cost, that 2.2 million that we've reflected on page 4. As Carly had alluded to, we are taking out a lot of your debt service in 22 and 23, and we're restructuring it in 24 through 43. So that's part and parcel with that cost.
Right, but any what I'm saying is any of the budget relief we would be getting, we'd actually be paying a higher interest rate on. 3% higher. And it may not add up to a lot as far as just those 2 years go. But I think it's something that needs to be considered. Is it really fiscally responsible to do so when we can perhaps, and I do remember in the finance meeting, you said it would take at least 3 years for the credit rating to become favorable. Now, there's no guarantee that any of this is going to work, correct?
That is correct. We can't opine on, Moody's is obviously a completely separate entity. We can't opine on when or how they change their ratings.
Right.
They want to see a few years, obviously, of positive trends.
But would they consider actually adding to the debt a positive? I mean, I don't know on that. Would they consider that a positive thing to do? I mean, they're not just going to look at the fund balance number. They're going to look at how we got there. The other consideration is, what if interest rates on debt start going up? And they very well could, even though historically they have stayed low for this type of debt. And I think all those things need to be considered.
Well, like Brian said earlier, your entire existing portfolio is fixed. So all of your debt is fixed currently. And the only, one of the factors that would be in your, like it would be in your favor when restructuring this now is just given how low current interest rates are, you would be capturing a much lower restructuring rate by doing this now to get yourself set up down the road than if we, I mean, I'm not sure which direction rates are going to go in 4 or 5 years. I can't see that, but I can see currently how low rates are, and it would help the district to capture those while also in doing this restructuring that is a little more involved.
Well, I'm looking at the total plan here. The total plan is to help the fund balance so we get a better credit rating. The only way that would make any difference to you is if you're going to refinance the debt down the road, which means it won't be fixed anymore, because it'll be more or less a new bond issue to refinance it. Or am I wrong on that?
So no, you are correct. I think, so just real quick to back up, with respect to rates, Carly had alluded to, it's obviously a very accommodating time with respect to rates. I think we're looking at just north of 3% in this restructuring. And I apologize, I thought you said 5% at some point, and I just wanted to clarify the market's nowhere near 5%. But to your point, you are correct. The call dates for the district's existing debt, it occurs in 22, 23, and 24. And it's the vast majority of the debt. It's about 40 million of your 55 million of debt outstanding. So I think part and parcel with that plan is to make sure that the district is in the most advantageous position in order to hopefully get an upgrade, which would lead to better economics on those refundings.
Well, let me ask you this.
And just real quick, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want anybody to misconstrue anything. But when we do refinance that debt, we are going to do it with a fixed rate again.
Yes.
So that would be locked in as well.
Right, but there's no way to know, because currently the 5% I was talking about is what the interest rate on the 2015A goes up to in 2023.
Correct.
Yes.
So, but there's no way of knowing at this point whether or not, and of course it's always a gamble with anything like this, whether or not we would actually, if we refinanced to, which is the only way this would make sense to do this at all. We could always not refinance if the interest rates are higher at that point.
Correct.
But then we've added $2 million onto a debt. I just don't see the logic. I understand what happened with the fund balance and to get the credit rating up, but there's no way of knowing if we're able to refinance, would it come in at a lower interest rate than 5% on that 2015A? Because the 2014 loan will be paid off in 2026. So in 2026, we're looking at not having $400 and some thousand worth of payments each year. At this point, it just doesn't make any sense to me to borrow money to save money when it costs you money. I understand what you're saying about the refinancing down the road, but if we refinance down the road and we just kick the debt out longer in order to do that, we also have to consider the fact that in approximately 20 years, that new EC is going to need major renovation. Because that's just the way things are built anymore. So we're looking at adding more debt at that point to do those renovations that will be needed. And I just want the board to consider everything, because I have no say in it. I can't vote, I think they need to look at absolutely everything. And somewhere down the line, they have to make a commitment that they will, if they do this, they will not spend that money no matter what. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bose. Brian?
Yes,
Yes, Brian, can you hear us?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys coming out tonight to talk to us. I apologize, I'm not really all that good with all this number stuff, so please bear with me here. But is there ever a possibility where there's any type of expected savings? So I know the upfront cost of the $2.2 million, but did you guys run any type of forecasts to determine what type of ratings upgrade we would need to get from Moody's for it to be cost effective to do this based on the interest rates? Anything like that, to where this would at least be break even and not costing us money to do?
Say, the microphone keeps getting scratchy. I'm sorry. Were you asking?
I apologize. Yeah. So is there ever a point where this proposition, making these moves, doesn't cost us money? So 3 years down the road, Moody's reevaluates our credit rating. We go up 1 or 2 ratings. Interest rates are favorable. What would we need for this to not cost the district money?
So generally speaking, no, I haven't run your refinancing at your current rating, your Baa1 negative outlook, versus if you got back to that A1 level. But general rule of thumb where we look for savings is about a 3% threshold, and it's 3% of the par amount. And there's roughly 40 million of debt outstanding, and at 3%, that would be $1.2 million of savings. But no, we haven't run any sort of look at what the refundings look like at current interest rates based on your existing or previous rating.
Okay,
They're
thank
just
you.
too-
I would think it would be
they're too far-
beneficial for my board to ask for some of that information. And I'm sorry for cutting you off there.
No, we can absolutely do that. And I was just going to say they're so far down the road with the refinancings that there's obviously interest rate risk between now and then, which we've mentioned before. But we can run a kind of matrix of different rating levels and where savings would be. That wouldn't be a problem at all.
Yeah, and please try to include some form of inflation in there for the interest rates as we clearly see that going through the roof. So I appreciate that. Second question is more for the board and the administration here. We've heard several times this evening that this is kind of part of a multifaceted plan or program that needs to be in place, and this is only kind of one pillar of that structure. So I really want to know what from the board, what plans are there to ensure that we don't overspend our money. I heard someone say the current budget proposal is already spending $1.2 million more than what we have. If the purpose of this is to rein spending in while kicking the loan down the can, so to speak, how are we doing that if we're not even starting off appropriately? So what plans are we going to put in place? Are they going to be written down, and how are we going to hold the board accountable? Because I don't feel that they've been held accountable in the past. So I'm not sure if Mr. Cleaver has any idea that he can share with us on that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the board, but I know as an administration, what we're trying to do is to look at additional revenue sources. But the biggest thing is to give the information to the board so they can make, decisions with all the information in front of them. We've talked about how that wasn't, necessarily the way it has been done in the past, but I could tell you that Mr. Rarick already has given more information than they've received. I know when Patty was here, she started getting that information out to the board as well. And so that is one of the steps that we're looking to do, is to be accurate with the information the board receives. The other one too is also to look at avenues of increasing revenue or decreasing spending. And one of them, I could tell you, the big area is charter schools. Charter schools, a huge cost of the district, cyber charter schools. So any students we can bring back or make the push to bring back into our district, that is an avenue where there could be a huge cost savings as well. Unfortunately, we can't count on state and federal money coming in all the time. So we need to make sure on our end we could really control the controllable on our end. We can't control what the state does and what they fund and what they don't fund. But I could tell you one of the big areas and big pushes for us is cyber school. Every kid we bring back, it could be anywhere from a $12,000 to $35,000 savings per student. So that is an area that we're really looking to hit as an administrative team in an effort to bring some of those funds back.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions for PFM from the board side.
There's still a attendee with his hand raised, Mr. Cleaver.
Do not see. Oh, it's not. There's no name to it. Hello. Yes. Can you please let us know your name? There's no name attached.
Harry Sittler.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. This question is for the board, for everyone except David Bradley. My question is, I understand everything you guys just went over, the restructuring and all of that. But what guarantee can you guys give us as taxpayers that you're not going to spend that money that's supposed to be put aside? You just have a poor track record. Anyone?
Carrie, this is Richard Belt speaking. I guarantee you that I will not vote for this. I don't think we need to put ourselves in this position. We're already so far in debt, it's not even funny. And putting ourselves further into debt is not responsible. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you. Rita?
I don't know what kind of guarantee would you like?
How about you guys are going to stick to your word? How about you guys are going to not spend money that you don't have? How about you guys have respect for our community and the taxpayers and what they can and cannot afford and be responsible? How about being responsible to our kids who are eventually going to grow up and either choose to stay here with massive amounts of debt or move out of state or somewhere else where they can afford?
I don't understand how that's a guarantee, Carrie.
No, I'm asking you, can you guarantee the public that you're not going to blow that money on something stupid or say, hey, we still need those tennis courts? You have no guarantee, can you?
I can guarantee that I personally, in the next 2 years I'm on the board, will not do anything stupid. That's the best I can do.
Well, thank you, Rita. Wayne?
All I can tell you is I'm on the athletic and building and grounds, and we've been staying in budget, and hopefully we can continue to do it.
Well, thank you, Wayne. But you're still on the board and you still vote for stuff.
Well, of course, that's why people elected me.
Yeah. Steve?
I have no comment for you.
Of course. Okay. Larry?
I'm going to actually echo the sentiments that I heard earlier. Yes, this past spending had been problematic, mostly given to the fact that the board was not provided the right information on things that were going on within the district from a financial perspective. And I will do my best, and can't guarantee, but for sure to not do anything that would jeopardize the possibility of the district refinancing those bonds at a higher rate to and for the end result to be a savings for our community. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Gail,
I wouldn't vote for it. Not in a heartbeat.
Joy, Joy.
I'm here.
What is,
I think you know as well as others that I'm in the minority, and there's 5 people on this board that vote in unison. And you know, who knows how they're making their decisions, because they're not transparent. These things appear on the agenda, and then these folks vote for them. And these are the same people who've been there all along, you know, and involved with the other folks for the last, whatever, 5-10 years, where all this huge debt has been created, and our $13 million of savings were blown. And it was all really obvious to everyone, even though Dave Bradley's a big mouth and people don't like hearing from him. What he foretold has come true. I mean, there's a newspaper article where Superintendent Cleaver is saying building the elementary center will save our district money. And the latest state auditor report is chastising us for not saving money on that account. So to many of us, like me, it's been really obvious that we've been heading in the wrong direction and that we would end up here. But 5 folks who are voting in unison, who brought us to this point and are amazed to find us here, I mean, they're going to continue doing that. And I don't know why.
okay. All I can say is today's a new day. Maybe you guys will really think this through, work as a team, and do the best make the best decision for our district. That's all I ask. And stick to it.
Is Barrington?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Barrington?
Yes, this is me.
Yes.
Hi, so I actually have a couple questions. Well, actually, the first one is pertaining to this, to the lady that was just speaking right now, when she asked people for the guarantee. There was one gentleman that had said no comment on it. I would like to ask him what's his particular reasoning for not commenting as to why we should have, to put our confidence into him and his ability if he's not going to give us an answer as to at least why he won't give an answer.
Barrington, since you didn't restrict me from speaking, I'm going to say that the reason they can get away with it is the arrogance of being an elected official. I'm going to ask the question, when they gave you that response, what are you going to do about it? Right? And that's the end result of this problem with the Auditor General's report, with the misspending, the lack of common sense, the idea of kicking cans down the road, the idea of not maintaining their district, the idea of not protecting students, the idea of all these things. The question becomes, the reason he can say no comment and get away with it, which is really arrogant in my opinion, is because I'm going to retort with the question of what are you going to do about it?
Well, are you asking me what am I going to do about it, or?
Yeah, I mean seriously, if your public official chooses to neglect the law, if your public official chooses to not follow proper school code or proper fiscal management, the question is, I mean, other than me jumping up and down trying to convince them that they need to do that or resign, what are you as an individual citizen, what rights, what power, what authority do you have to do something about it?
Well, I will use the best of my ability as a citizen and as a member of this community to make it very well known that this person is showing that they don't have the best interest of our children at heart, because they're making it very obviously known. And I honestly think the community needs to be made aware, and I will do my damnedest to make sure that the community is aware aware that said person doesn't even have an interest to even answer a question as simple as that.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. Will you seek their resignation? Will you use your authority as an individual citizen and file paperwork with the judge to say, this guy took an oath of office to be a public servant for our benefit, and then therefore needs to be removed from office because he's not making these decisions and not following PDE's law and
Mr.
neglecting
Bradley,
the law, and therefore should be removed.
Please.
I will do
I'm asking the
everything in my
question of
legal.
Barrington.
Yes, and I would very much like to answer that. I will do everything in my legal power.
To the point of order, we're talking about the finance stuff, not about Mr. Holland or any other board member or what you're going to do once we get out of the meeting. So,
but this does involve the finances
Yes.
because there's a question about finances that wasn't answered. So I'm trying to figure out why the financial question wasn't answered.
Yes, because if we could generate the questions to PFM too, because I know them doing the presentation, I want to make sure everyone has a chance to get all their questions answered with PFM.
Let me help a little bit. PFM, in the event that this board does not hold that money aside and decides to consume it, how detrimental, other than the $2 million they spent to try to regain some value with Mooney's, how bad will the Mooney's report be then if they don't honor their word? Can someone from PFM answer that question?
I mean, Moody's is a separate entity, and while it wouldn't be a favorable action, I can't give you an straight answer as to what exactly it would do to your rating, how it would notch if you were to get downgraded. That's I can't speak to that.
But we could all agree that it'll end badly.
Mr. Barrington, what are your other questions to make sure you have a chance to get them answered from PFM or RBC?
Okay, just one last question. I noticed at the end those are going to be a general questions to be asked. Now, is that only about what the topic of today, or just in general?
That could be in anything at the end of the meeting. Yes.
All right. Okay, so I'll hold my next question for that particular moment.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members for PFM?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cleaver, this is Nathan. I'm sorry, I have one question for PFM. The new bonds that will be issued, the refinance here, what's the callability status of those bonds? Do they just have to run out to the end, or could they in the future be also refinanced or paid off early?
They will also have a call feature. I believe it'll be between 5 and 8 years that they will be callable given their tax exempt or taxable nature. So you won't be stuck with these restructured bonds the whole way through 2043 without an option down the road to refinance them if rates were to stay as low as they are now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Brian and Carly, for answering the questions. We really do appreciate it. And again, thank you for taking the time to explain it and coming back again for the regular board meeting and also the finance meeting.
Not a problem.
Not a problem. If there are any other questions that arise, feel free to reach out to either Carly or myself.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Okay, I'm going to bring up the agenda again. You able to see the agenda?
You can see it, Mr. Cleaver. And again, I'd like to thank PFM for their extensive explanation of the refinancing options. We'll move on to public comment on agenda. I know Mrs. Bose had submitted a question earlier. Now Mrs. Patino had escaped to the ladies' room, I believe. So Barr Bose, do you still have a comment on the agenda, or was that completely covered in your questions to PFM.
No, I had a question on the collective bargaining agreement and dates within it. On line 54, where it talks about the $1,000 payment, it says to each person, so I'm assuming it's 159 people since it's $159,000.
Yes, that is correct.
The one-time payment, it's a one-time payment and is applicable only to the 21-22 school year. And then it talks about when it will be paid. Does that mean it will not be paid until we're into the 21-22 school year?
No, it will be paid that last payment in June, of this June, if the contract is approved.
That's what made no sense to me. It says this is a one-time payment and is applicable only to the 21-22 school year. Should that have been 2020-21 school year if it's going to be paid in that year? Or would this be considered a prepayment?
It's considered a prepayment, and it's for the teachers who will currently be here. So that is why it's written that way. So yes, you are correct with the prepayment piece.
All right, so the when you sent me an email, it would cost us, because they're going up 2 steps in the next school year as well.
Yes.
So you said it would cost off the top of my head about $416,000.
That is correct.
That include the 159.
That does, yes.
All right. I just wanted to clarify that because it seemed to me the dates should have been different. Because we're not supposed to prepay stuff, but I guess that's only on the grants, the federal and the state.
Right, and our teachers are paid, even though for 2021, they're paid all the way up. If they have 26 pay, they're getting paid after that July 1st date for work they did the prior year.
All right. Is that because the first pay starts in September?
Yeah, and the way the contract also runs to August 31st, to August, the end of August, and starts that September date.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think of that. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't making prepayments that we shouldn't make. Or that it was dated correctly and not just an oversight. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, we'll move on to communications. Mr. Cleaver.
Give me once, I believe, I want to make sure this. Ms. Kistler?
And I have a public comment as well prior to the meeting.
Ms. Kistler?
Nobody, I don't believe they were submitted prior to the meeting, and then Ms. Pertinio only had mentioned that Ms. Bose had submitted a public comment on the agenda.
Let's not silence the public. Let's
Pardon?
have their hand
Hold
raised.
on,
Let them speak.
Mr. Bradley.
Let them speak.
Yeah, I believe that was by accident. So for the other individual. So yes, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, there is no other public.
Yeah, so what I have a public comment. So basically, the public comment is simple. On this agenda, we have several financial expenditures, significant financial expenditures, including the proposed teacher's contract that is excess of millions of dollars. And we have currently a budget that is $1.2 million over that has not been reconciled yet. In the event that these things go through and all these dollars are allocated by board motion, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, putting the cart before the horse when you don't have a means to pay for them. And there's a couple contracts you'll see today on the agenda that pertain to the budget, yet we don't have a budget. Now our budget is about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 months late in its creation. And the fact that just like we learned from PFM, if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answers. It seems as though this board is putting the cart before the horse and taking action prior to even having an approved budget Now, I know that there's a budget meeting coming up, so I think we should postpone some of these actions until after a budget is reviewed. You shouldn't go spending money that you don't know you have. End of comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stern.
We'll move on to, could you please advance the agenda, Mr. Cleaver? Move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the March.
Mr. Stern, I just have my communications.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry about that, sir.
Yep. That's okay. The Lehigh Area School District, if you weren't aware, was featured in a Success Story article for PSBA on relation to being one of the 4 awards given nationally by the Christmas Spirit Foundation. The district has provided over 445 trees in just the last 3 years. This is a great program that the students and staff look forward to every year. And everyone that's involved, it's a team effort. Everyone's to be commended for it. This was something that started at the elementary level and now has expanded itself into the other 3 buildings. So again, it's great positive feedback for the district to be one of only 4 districts nationally that have received that type of award and acknowledgement. So I'd like to thank PSBA for featuring that article. And I also know that the Times News did an article as well. So I'd like to thank all the media outlets for doing a story on that. The elementary students and staff have started to work on the grounds around the building as part of their Earth Day activities. If you can take time, these beautiful days to take a nice walk around the facility here, see the great work that the kids are doing, and they will continue to do things throughout the school year. This initiative was also discussed at the Building and Grounds Committee as well, and we're really excited about the students and the staff taking part into beautifying the area. We are currently working to finalize our summer program offerings for our students this year. Last year, as you're aware, with the pandemic, we were not able to offer any summer programs. This year, however, we are planning to bring back summer programs, the wellness, the Title I camps, and different things. Actually, some are on the agenda this evening for vote. We're hoping to be able to increase the number of students that will be able to eligible and able to attend. So just keep alert. We will be blasting out notifications via our social media outlets as well. With the programs that we will be offering in the summer. Importantly, kindergarten registration is in full swing. For parents, please visit our district website for all the information and registration requirements to get your child registered for kindergarten. You could go online, all the instructions are there. You could set up your profile for your child. Once the information is entered and submitted and reviewed, you'll be directed to a link to schedule an appointment for the on-site registration and assessment that's going to take place between May 3rd and May 14th. Again, if you have any questions, consider kindergarten registration. We ask that you contact the Lehigh Elementary Center office or send them an email and they will get back to you. And that concludes my report, Mr. Stern.
My apologies for.
That's okay.
Mr. Cleaver. We move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the Lehigh Area High School or the Lehigh Area School District minutes of the March 22nd board meeting. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second by Nathan.
First by Mr. Wentz and second by Mr. Fuller. Any comments on the meeting of the March minutes of the March 22nd meeting?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Does anybody else have a comment or just me?
Just you, Mr. Bradley, please proceed.
Okay, it seems as though our board meeting minutes are not in compliance with our own school policy related to the recording of individuals speaking their subject matter and the recording of the vote. Can we get those corrected prior to this vote?
Can you state specific issues?
Not at this time, other than the fact that if you read the policy that we say we're going to do certain things, anyone can read the minutes and realize that those things were not done. We brought this up many times. I think it needs to be a little closer discipline to the responsibility of character, that if we're going to say we as a board are going to do things, then we as a board should do them. That's all.
Are there any other comments on the board? Roll call vote, Mr. Tenio.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
No.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no, motion carries.
On to item B, I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the March 24th, 2021 special virtual board meeting, enclosure number 2. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second it, Steve.
I have a motion by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Holland. Any comments on the minutes for the March 24th, 2021 special meeting? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Tenio?
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
This one was much more in compliance. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern. 9 yes, motion carries.
On the financial matters, I need a motion and a second to approve the Lehighton Area High School and Lehighton Area Middle School activity funds for March 2021. Motion and a second, please. That is enclosure number 3.
So moved, Wayne.
Second.
By Mr. Wentz, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Any comments on item A? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstain, lack of information.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
On to item B, I need a motion and a second to approve the payment of bills for March 2021 for a total of $2,814,424.32. Motion and a second, please.
I'll make a motion.
This is Nathan. I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Fuller. Any questions on item B? Hearing none, roll call vote on the approval of the payment of bills, Ms. Pertini, please.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstention, lack of information.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention, motion carries.
Thank you. On item C, I need a motion and a second to approve the following reports 1 through 6. Motion and a second, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on the reports on item C?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Bradley.
This report still shows expenditures in excess of the budget, which is not legally to be able to be done by our district. It's our responsibility to move those funds so they can't be used other places if we're going to use them. And we're supposed to move them prior to exceeding the budget. The fact that we have been breaking this Pennsylvania Department of Education law as defined by the Auditor General and have repeatedly ended up here in these meetings with these reports that show that this board is authorizing to spend money that it doesn't have. Has to be corrected.
Thank you. Any other comments on the reports? Roll call vote, Ms. Bertunio, please.
Mr. Wainwright,
Hold on, Larry. Don't you want to correct them to make them lawful first? Larry?
Excuse me? Yes, my
Hold
vote
on.
is.
Mr. Filer, can you please opine whether or not we can even approve?
Ms. Joy Beers,
Wait a second. Can we get a lawyer to? I mean, let our solicitor opine on this. Are we allowed to approve
Before
a
I vote,
report
I
that's
wanna know-
illegal?
Before I vote, I want to know if what Dave said is true. Are we exceeding our planned expenditures?
We're currently working on a list of motions to transfer funds to where they were put incorrectly to where they belong. That will be on the May Finance Committee meeting and then the May board meeting for approval.
So to answer your question, yes, I'm correct. We're illegally spending money we don't have in budget items that are not appropriate, and we've already done it. It's already water under the dam and illegal and irresponsible and not within character.
My
My
vote
question
no.
is whether or not our lawyer should be opining on this prior to us doing. I think you have to postpone all this till we get the job done right. It's irresponsible to our public. I mean, you just got done doing a meeting where everybody said they were going to do it, and Steve says he doesn't want to even give an opinion, and then here you are approving something that you're so far over budget on many of these items that it's hundreds of percentage points over budget. It's just it's immoral. It's wrong. I don't know how you guys are getting away with it.
My vote is no.
Mr. Richard Belt,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
No, they should be postponed until they get corrected.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes, and I appreciate Mr. Barrett's comments there that the budgetary movements will occur to make these reports and our budget legitimate in the May meeting. Thank you. Yes.
And Larry, then under what moral code can you say to yourself?
Bradley, don't question my moral code.
I'm asking your moral
Thank
code.
you. We're moving
He already
on.
admitted that it's wrong. He admitted that it's wrong.
I need a motion and a second to make the following transfer from the
just
general
muted me
fund
again, but
food
Larry,
service
under what moral
fund as per reimbursement from the Commonwealth for
Why are you silencing me? It's a moral question, Larry.
For February,
How can you
March
morally do that job?
2021. I
Resign.
need a motion
Stop
and a
muting me.
second, please.
The
So
host is
moved,
muting me.
Wayne.
Motion
I'll
by
second it.
The host is
Steve.
muting me. Resign.
you, Mr. Bradley, you resign. You cost the district
No,
more
we're
in
following the law.
years than
We're
I
following
have.
the law. You got to follow the law.
I have a
bud.
motion by
You
Mr.
don't
Wentz.
have
Can I
any
get a
lawful
second
authority
on the
as a
budget
school
transfer?
director to violate the law. You can plead immunity all
Motion
you
by
want.
Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland.
You
Take
have
the
no
budget
right
transfer
or legal
from the General
authority.
fund to the food service fund.
You
Any
have no
questions
public
on that
official
budget
legal.
transfer?
You have no public official legal authority to take action in violation of Pennsylvania school code.
Hearing no comments, roll call vote, Ms. Bertinio, please, on item B.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item E, I need a motion and a second to approve the exemptions per capita and or occupational tax per enclosure number 6. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second by Nathan.
Who did the first on that motion, please?
I did, Larry. The one holding you morally accountable. Me, David Bradley.
Motion by Mr. Bradley, a second by Mr. Fuller. to approve the exemptions of the per capita and or occupational tax as per enclosure number 6. Any comments on enclosure number 6 or item E? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Virginio, please.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
Excuse me, Larry, before you move forward, back to this exemption list, I'd like to make a public service announcement that one of the individuals on this list that's getting exemption, it was found that they should have been exempt since the year 2000. It's 20 years. If for whatever reason that anyone in this community feels that there may be an exemption, whether they're retired, whether they're no longer a resident here, whether they are disabled or whatever it is, they should definitely reach out and get off of this tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. On to item F, I need a motion and a second to approve the elect program, the school county intermediate unit number 29 for services assisting qualifying students at no cost to the district. Funding for this program is issued through PA Department of Human Services, TANF funds, enclosure number 7. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mrs. Spinelli. Any questions on item F? Call vote, Ms. Virginio, please.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
and Mr. Larry Stern. 9 yes, motion carries.
On to item G, I need a motion and a second to approve the affiliation agreement between Cookstown University and the Lehighton Area School District as per the enclosure, number 8. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved by Nathan.
Second.
I have a first by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mrs. Spinelli on item G. Any comments on item G? Vote, Ms. Virginio, please. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item H, I need a motion and a second to approve the technology pool legal services agreement for the 2021-22 school year with the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit number 21. I need a motion and a second, please, on enclosure number 9. Thank you.
So moved.
Second by Nathan.
I have first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Fuller on item H. Any questions on item H?
I have one.
Bradley, proceed.
Does anyone else want to respectively go first?
Bradley, I give you the floor. Please proceed.
This is one of those situations where the district is committing funds to be paid, yet we do not have a budget for the school year, which this will entail. To make a decision prior to having the budget would be premature, irresponsible. Whereas I agree that this is one of those must-haves in the budget and one of those must-haves in the community and within our district. It still is financially irresponsible to make commitments when we don't know where we stand. And in the event that we can't afford this, it might be an opportunity to negotiate with the CLIU, because we are in a situation where we can barely make our minimum payments. We might have to negotiate with them to score a better deal than their current offering. I think it's irresponsible to have this on the agenda at this time without a confirmed budget.
Any further comments? Roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstention, lack of information pertaining to the budget of whether or not this can even be afforded. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
Now, item I need a motion and a second to approve the agreement with Diligent Corporation for Board Docs LT Board Management Solution Software at an annual subscription rate of $2,700 for enclosure number 10. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second by Nathan.
I have a first by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Fuller. Any comments on item I?
I have one.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Your comment.
Anyone want to go first?
Please, Mr. Bradley, make your comment.
My comment is similar to the last. Here, this district is once again spending money that it doesn't have allocated within a budget because it has not assigned itself a budget. It's April 26th, months past that budget due date. And after our AFR was responsible to be done, and for us to go down a path where you're spending money before you know where you might need it, like busing or supplies or teachers or union contract, irresponsible, completely irresponsible of a duly elected board.
I would like to make my comment that actually a budget is not due till May from a proposed budget perspective, since we are staying underneath the Act 1 index. So your statement previously was false, Mr. Bradley.
Absolutely not. You don't have a budget
Okay,
yet?
absolutely not.
You don't
It's
have
your
it because
opinion.
it's
It's your opinion.
You
Your
show
opinion.
expenditures.
Any
It's
other
not
comments
opinion.
from the board, please?
It's not opinion. You can't shut down an opinion. It's a fact. You can have your own opinion, not your own facts. The reality is the current proposed budget shows $1.2 million
Bradley,
being
Mr. Bradley,
spent more
you're not even talking-
than
you're-
you're taking in. Therefore,
Forget it. You're mixing apples and oranges. Okay?
No, I'm saying that the budget is responsibility to be handed to these people as a preliminary, as a proposed, and then a final. We have done none. That's the problem. This board is not taking its responsibility seriously. And you're kicking the can down the road, as you have done for decades and has been admonished by the Auditor General. And you've been on that board for the entire period to which that Auditor General chastised this district for its irresponsibility for financial management.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
No.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no, motion carries.
On to item J, I need a motion and a second to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Lehighton Borough Law Enforcement and the Lehighton Area School District for the 2021 and 2022 school year and the 2022 and 2023 school year, enclosure number 11.
So moved, Steve.
Second, Wayne.
First by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on enclosure number 11?
I have one discussion point.
Yes, Mr. Riley, go ahead.
Anyone else want to go first on this? Okay, I'll politely move forward. Once again, we don't have our budget done. This is an extraneous expense. And whereas a security guard has a loyalty to protect the students and a loyalty to save and secure the district, our police officers, our police force within the district, which is a costly expenditure, has an obligation to uphold the law and therefore arrest these very students that they're there to protect. I don't know of any person that would want a security guard for their affluent child to be a police officer. Maybe an ex-police officer is great, but with the authority to arrest, it makes more sense that you would hire a security guard than a police officer. These are young children. They're prone to make mistakes. They should not carry those mistakes forward with arrests, but security, supervision, and assistance. Plus, the cost has not been allocated. With the current proposed budget is $1.2 million off. We should really review, prior to even making this agreement, what we're going to do on our budget. And unbeknownst to Larry, that was responsible that we did our AFR back in October, and then we do preliminary budgets. And I agree, if we're going to just do a several % increase, and even then still have $1.2 million being short, that yes, the board can get away with not disclosing to the public the utter chaos that they have created. This should not be reviewed until such time that the budget is reviewed. These dollars will probably be needed to be saved just for us to keep within the index. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley, this document has nothing to do with the budget. It is a zero cost. It is an agreement between the Lehighton Area School District and the Lehighton Area Borough Police Department on policies and procedures of how they will interact and how we'll share information and how we will work together. It has nothing to do with what you just stated.
It has to do with the fact that you have a police officer.
It does not have anything to do with
Yes, it does. It has to do with whether or not we have a police officer.
Or anything like that.
It has to do with whether you have a police force.
I made my comment. You made yours. Thank you very much. Any other
Larry,
comments from any other board member, please?
Larry,
you can't let anybody have the last word, can you, Mr.
Sure, Larry, but you're saying that we're having a police force again. Are we
It's
having
actually
a police force?
required by law. Exactly.
Are we going to have a police force again, Larry? Are we still having 2 police officers or 1? How many police officers are we going to have?
This is an agreement between the district and the Lehighton Borough Police.
I agree. Between our police force
totally
and their
off
police
track.
force.
Roll call vote, Mr.
Between our
Tenniel,
police force and their police force.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstention. Lack of information.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
7 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
On to item K, I need a motion and a second to approve the Harbin Lehigh Intermediate Units policies, procedures, and use of funds by school district that are used for the submission with the 2021-2022 IDEA B Section 611 project application enclosure number 12. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
This is Nathan. I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Fuller. Is there any questions on enclosure number 12?
I have one.
Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Pertinio, please.
I said I have
Mr.
one.
Wayne Wentz,
Hold on. I said I have one. I have one.
Bradley.
Stop muting me, Mr. Host. but
Mr.
I have
Bradley,
one.
could you please make your comment?
Does anyone else want to go first? Okay, I'll be glad to make a comment. Once again, we're using and consuming district funds that we have not allocated for this purpose on an official budget. Our current budget is about $1.2 million short, including the index, as Larry has stated, that he's going to have a tax raise up to the index. I think we should do that first. I think it'd be irresponsible and immoral to do it otherwise. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board, please? Roll call vote on item A. Mr. Tenio.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstention, lack of information.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention, motion carries.
On to item L, I need a motion and a second to approve the dual enrollment agreement between Lehigh Carbon Community College and the Lehigh Area School District for the 2021-2022 school year, which is July 1, 2021 through July 31st, 2022. As per enclosure number 13, I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved. Steve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mrs. Spinelli concerning item. Any questions on enclosure number 13?
I have one.
Proceed, Mr. Bradley.
Would anyone else like to go first? Okay, barring none. How much does this cost the district?
The dual enrollment program that the students take part in is paid by the students.
So the answer is this costs our district none of our school funds at all. No transportation cost, no enrollment cost, no reimbursement cost. There's 0 tax dollars being used for this program.
There is no fee for the district. The students, if they take a dual enrollment course, they play for that course directly to Luzerne County Community, or excuse me, Lehigh Carbon Community College.
I agree. That wasn't my question. Not for the students' fee that they pay. Does the district incur any financial responsibility for this program at all, either directly or indirectly?
At this point, there is none, but if the district would, look to expand something like you said about transportation, that would be, it would be a cost that the community college doesn't cover the cost of transportation.
Thank you.
Any further questions on item L? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts,
yes,
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes, this is a wonderful program. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item M. I need a motion and a second to approve the worksite agreement with the Carbon County Workforce Training for their summer youth employment program at no cost to the district as per enclosure number 14. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
So-
Nate.
Second, Wayne.
A motion by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any comments by the board on item M? Hearing none, we'll go roll call vote. Ms. Bertinio, please.
Mr. Richard Belts,
yes,
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On the item N, I need a motion and a second to approve Huddle Athletic Director Package as recommended by the Athletic Committee for the 2022 school year, payable from the 2021-2022 athletic budget, enclosure number 15. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
So
Wentz.
moved. Go second by Steve.
First by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland. Any questions on item N?
I have one.
Proceed.
We currently have a financial crunch, and we're going to spend $11,000, as we have in the past, on extracurricular activities when we haven't even met the basic requirements for mandated services. Shouldn't we first review the mandated services that this district needs to provide prior to going down the optional services and making decisions that are going to handicap or handcuff this board when it comes to budget time, since this board has not provided a budget to the district and has just called an emergency meeting later this week to review the same budget after this board meeting where you're starting to try to spend all this money. It sounds a little backwards, guys. And I also wanted to ask, just because it's curious, so the total package price was $11,700 per year, and then it says it has a value of $22,449. How did they calculate the actual value versus what they're charging? Or that just seems, it seems like a markup to be marked down. Does anybody pay this $22,000 value, or are we special?
It is a promotion, Mr. Bradley, that they are sharing. This was presented by Mr. Spots at the athletic committee meeting, the benefits and different things, and that's why it is coming to the board for recommendation. But the value of it, they put at that amount. If anyone's paying that amount currently, I don't have that information.
Any further comments?
And this is basically scouting agreements, 24-hour turnaround time on basketball, volleyball, and soccer games, and scout reports on football. That's what we're buying. Is that correct? And online video editing, recruiting, and highlight tools.
It's also a benefit of streaming the games as well.
Okay.
Broadcasting and live streaming capabilities as well.
Recruiting and highlight tools?
What's that?
Can a high school recruit members?
It's
No,
for
this is Bradley. This is for, go ahead, Mr. Cleaver. You
Sorry, yeah, that's for the colleges to use the tool as a recruiting tool, so the highlight tapes could be made and then shared with college recruiters for the athletics, that's sports that are being videotaped.
Excellent. So the recruiting and highlight tools would be a function of giving these individual participants within our district to create a resume to give to colleges.
Yes, that would be an option for them.
Did anyone review this with Channel 13? Hold on. Did anyone review this with Channel 13? If they offer similar services so that we can do it, they have all the resources and they're there. Is there a difference between the two?
The huddle is something that the colleges can connect to. I don't know that the colleges would be able to connect to anything with Channel 13. And then the huddle also gives the capabilities of the students to make their own highlight films as well, or coaches.
We're spending over $10,000 for a service. Is there other services that provide this package? Or do they have an exclusive?
Not to this detail.
Okay, but my question was, is there other companies that provide this service that this was bid to?
No, this was not a bid.
This was not a bid. We're just spending this money. And we're taking it out of the athletic budget, which is on our main budget, which we don't even have yet, and it's a $1.2 million short. Once again, I think you guys are jumping the gun. Doesn't make sense. You're handcuffing the board, making decisions prior to a real budget for those people that you just heard are very upset with the fact that this district has for years driven this agency off the financial cliff by decision making just like this. End of comment.
Thank you. Any other comments, please? Item N. Roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mr. David Bradley,
Abstain, lack of information, missing the budget.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
yes,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No.
Mr. Richard Belts,
No.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention, motion carries.
Under personnel, I need a motion and a second to approve the LAEA collective bargaining agreement for the 2021-22 school years as per enclosure number 16. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second, Rita.
I have a first, Mr. Wentz, a second by Ms. Spinelli. Comments on the LAEA collective bargaining agreement.
I have one.
Proceed, Mr. Bradley.
Nobody else has a comment on this
No, we
multi-million
let
dollar
you go
contract?
first. You get to go first.
You sure? Does anyone else have? I'd love for to hear.
Dave,
Bradley.
Dave, if you'd like, I'll make a comment.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't want to be hogging the thing. I'm humble. Thank you.
Yep, I'd just like to remind everyone, and this has come up on past board meetings, that we did not have a professional negotiator representing the board. But the other side of the fence, they did have their professional representing them to put this agreement together. And I'd like to remind everyone how this meeting started, talking with the financial advisor about our financial situation. That's it. It's like obvious we should not approve this without having a professional representing the district, reviewing these terms and thinking on our financial situation and thinking about whether or not this actually makes sense.
I will add to that not only did we not have a professional help the district, even though we asked, begged, and pleaded, as we had in the past, use professionals to help negotiate this contract to make sure they're fair. We used Rita and Nathan to do some of this negotiation, and Nathan apparently missed at least the last meeting, and Rita, in reviewing the contract, would make comments like, well, as long as everybody's not 100% happy, then it's a good negotiation. But I pulled up the 2012 to 2016, the 2016 to 20, and the 20 to 22, and I reviewed all three contracts, and we see that there's a significant change in a variety of ways, the bulk of which I want to understand why, once you get to a 20-year, in the new contract, once you get 20 years in, you get, if you make it to the next step, which is basically a step is a half a year or a year, depending on exactly how it applies to which employees. It's a 9% raise. And the way that this contract reads, they're giving 2 steps to every employee, and they're also giving $1,000 bonus to every employee under this contract. I think it was gracious of the district to completely pay for all the employees, as mandated at the state level, that those taxpayers continued, even though they were suffering from the shutdown, that they collected those taxes and made sure that all of our employees were compensated, whether they were or were not in the classroom. And I think that there's value to that. I'm glad that they got paid. They definitely earned their pay. But I don't think that we can afford to give a couple step raise, which is roughly 7%, and then also have a contract that gives a 9% or more raise at the 20-year mark, which is a complete deviation from the contract that there was last time. And then thirdly, since we don't have a budget, we don't even know if we can afford this, because you're $1.2 million. They did some plug numbers and they put some extra dollars aside to be able to take it from our general fund, which we already learned has caused us great stress in our Moody's report to give to the people underneath this contract. Rita says of all the years that they deserve a raise, this is the one. And whereas I respect that there is automatically raises within the system for steps, you know, for staying with us, which we appreciate. And also there's raises for adding education from a bachelor's to master's, master's plus 15, master's plus 30, master's plus 45, that it is obvious that it is not been negotiated in the interest of the people paying for this contract, but instead we should have put someone in the room that had the understanding of how this works, and that person was not Rita, because even when we asked these questions in executive session, we were not really responsive to the answers. This definitely should be postponed till after the budget season. There's no reason. It's already months and months behind in its responsibility to get it done. And I believe whereas the union has approved this, it looks like they're lobbying us as to the approval of this funds that they're trying to extract from the district coffers. It doesn't appear that this board negotiated the contract of what we can afford to provide and then seek a cooperation, because it also shows that there's a massive Cadillac benefits plan that just doesn't, to me, make sense. That the employees would rather have a Cadillac health plan rather than just physically more pay, because if they got more pay, the Pennsylvania State Peasers Association would also be kicking in some more of their pension. They'd have a higher pension. They'd have more funds in their pocket. Those people underneath this collective bargaining agreement typically live within this region in this area, and then therefore reconsume those dollars that they get. So there's a value to the district if they had more money in their pocket rather than in our Cadillac, gold-plated Cadillac benefits package. And then also we questioned whether or not and what educational benefits this district was going to obtain from these massive pay increases for the students that we're buying these services for. And the response was that we have not had any. So therefore, during that negotiation, we're missing some of the responsibility that you would add to an employee in exchange for these funds, including $1,000 stipend, which is basically just a payment. Now, I checked with Peasers. We are legally allowed to provide a cash payment that is exempt from Peasers. However, even Peasers mentioned that is, I'm not going to use the word nefarious, but it is definitely not in the benefit of the other people within their own Peaser community and the retirement funds, because you're trying to neglect that opportunity. So when I reviewed this contract and I tried to get the board to review it, it was met with the normal stern arrogance and just shutting it down without having any logical conversation. So I'm going to agree with Joy greatly that we need to have someone of a professional review this, work with the union, work with our budget, and see if we can get this district straightened out. It's not been in the best interest of the district for these past 10 years. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? We've had Joy and David. Any other comments?
I would like to make a comment. We worked on this negotiation for over a year. We were far apart. We came together as best we could. Our teachers gave up something and the board agreed to something. That's how negotiation works. You can criticize me all you like, it's fine, but people deserve to know that they can move forward. We did the best we could, and our teachers were gracious enough to accept it. This is not a massive raise. They're doing away with a salary increase to get this. They're making some insurance concessions to get this. And I really resent the fact that you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about as to how we reached this agreement and why we didn't have someone professionally negotiate a silly 2-year contract so we could just make it through these next couple years with the wonderful staff we have who deserved way more than this, but we couldn't give it to them. So don't tell me I'm giving things away. They gave, we gave, that's how it works. End of conversation.
Actually, Rita, I'd like to hear what we gave. I see $1,000, 2 steps, which is about 7%, and this 9% 20-year bonus.
Mr. Bradley, you're pulling things from several different places and you're not putting the whole thing out there.
Great. So what did they give us?
I am not going to answer you. I gave my comment on this and that's all I'm going to do. I think they deserve more, but we gave them as much as they could get. That's it.
And the reality is when you make a statement like you gave them as much as they could get, that's what I'm talking about. We need someone in the room. I'd like to hear from someone that might have some input on this. I see Brian Shainer's hand is raised.
Oh, no, this is not for deliberation with the public at this point, Mr. Bradley. No.
It's deliberation by the board.
No, it's not deliberation by the public. Thank you very much.
I know, but I have a question for Mr. Shainer. I have a right to tap his experience. I have a right to tap his experience. Why not?
Mr. Bradley?
What gives you the lawful authority to block my information?
I can do what I like. It's a point of order. This is not a point of order.
I am a board member.
Topic. Thank you very much.
Hold on. I'm a board member. We have a motion on the floor.
Is there any other?
We're having discussion. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
This is not for public comment at this point.
It's not about public comment. It's about me getting information prior to a vote. I'm legally responsible.
No, you're not.
Wait, let me finish my sentence.
You're not.
I am legally.
I believe we have a motion in a second.
I know, but I am legally responsible under Pennsylvania school code.
Excuse
me. Hold on. No, let me finish my sentence. I have a legal responsibility under Pennsylvania school code and LASD policy 011 to seek input.
Please, if you can get it.
One more time. Hold on. I have a legal responsibility under LASD policy 011 to seek the input from our constituency. And if we were in a public meeting, if you were in a public meeting and did not have the authoritarian,
this is not a public meeting. This is a meeting. This is a board meeting.
This is a public meeting, sir. It's a public meeting. It's a public meeting.
Gail, don't.
It's a public meeting. And if he was in this room and I wanted to seek his opinion,
no, we don't. No, we're not going there. We're not.
Don't be this arrogant, Larry.
No, I'm not being arrogant. I'm following protocol. We have been so lax on allowing input during the discussion time for the board.
Fight all you want to rubber stamp.
It's been getting out of control, and I'm pulling it back. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, oh my God is right, Gail.
You're silent.
Maybe you should read some of the documents,
You're awful. You don't know how to hear yourself out loud.
Roll call vote, please.
No, sir. Let the person speak. Let the person speak.
A comment as a board member?
Good luck, Joy. Larry's on a tear.
Okay. So I just like to respond a couple things that Rita said. Rita commented that Dave wasn't present, that he doesn't understand what happened there in the meeting room. But I would like to remind everyone that Dave tried over and over again to be there. He begged to be involved. He wanted to be present. And he was blocked from being part of those negotiation meetings. So now Rita points out that Dave wasn't there to fully appreciate the how it all commenced, but he was blocked from being there, yet he wanted to be there. And then I think that I recall that this contract has like an upfront cost of, is it $400,000 this year? Is that correct, Mr. Cleaver?
No, that isn't correct for this year. This year, the staff did take a freeze currently and using also the same salary scale for 1920, 2021, and 21-22. So the cost for this year is currently $7,450, which will pay for longevity for 12 staff members and also column movement. For the 21-22 school term, as Ms. Bose pointed out, it was $416,738, but that includes $159,000. So for this year, I think it's important to know that the teachers are currently working and agreeing to their 1920 salaries.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So going forward, it is a net gain, and I think what Rita's mischaracterizing is that more was asked for and only part of that was given, and that's not the same as giving something up to get something else. So it is going to cost us more going forward. It's not a stalemate. It's not a give this, get that back kind of situation.
And why isn't it, Ms. Beers?
What do you mean, why?
Because they gave things to us. They took a salary freeze. That's a give and take situation. I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're getting at. I'm so used to everyone following Dave's lead with all of the running around the issues without giving specifics. So what didn't they give? I'm curious what you think they didn't do, why it wasn't a give and take situation.
Because there isn't a loss. It's gain going forward. I mean, I think you talk about the salary freezes for this year, and I think we have to take into account that COVID hurt this community in a very big way. And so if staff members agree to a pay freeze, I kind of think that that's to be expected when they're part of this community and they understand that everyone is hurting. And I don't think you can relate that to the contract going forward.
And to be fair,
I still
Joey,
think you're big on a double talk with Dave, and that's all I'm saying. I never get any sense out of you people, but that's neither here nor there. That's your opinion, and you're certainly welcome to it.
I will give you a specific on page 38 of the old contract. In the step part, the step agreement, it goes 17, 18, 19, and then it goes from 20, year 20, year 21, year 22, and year 23 are frozen at, in this situation, a bachelor gets 70,000 plus, and a master's plus 45 gets 73. Frozen for 4 years. Under the new contract, instead of being frozen from year 20 to 23, those 4 years, it goes from 20 to any step over 20, and it's a 9% increase for every year going forward, and even more when they get to the master's plus 45. I think the professional negotiators of the PSEA who were there, the same people, by the way, that have a PAC that financially funds the political campaigns of the rubber stamping five, that motivates teachers to work the polls for these five, so they get this friendly relationship, and then you corner people from not being in the room during the negotiation, and you block a professional negotiator, as we have done in the years past, and then you give away not only a stable 4-year period where there's no increase at the 20-year mark, but you change it to a 9% increase. Rita, did you look at this, or did you just say, oh, they gave away something, so therefore we're good? I guess we're good here.
No, I did not. And you need, Mr. Bradley, you need to stop right now. I was in the negotiating sessions. I do not want to hear you. I looked over that contract for over a year. Just stop. I am done talking to you. You can put me on YouTube. You can say what you want. You can criticize what you want. And you weren't in that room because you're not fit to be in that room. Nobody wanted you in that room. It wasn't me.
But in
Mr. Bradley, just for clarification, you're comparing a 2012 to 2016 contract.
No, sir,
one for 20 and 21.
No, I'm comparing the 2016 to 2020 contract.
Those steps were not touched.
They were. Take a look.
No, they were not. For 19 and 20, those steps are the same for 2021 and 21-22.
Take a look
Please.
at the steps to page 38 and page 40.
Thank you. I think you just realized.
No, page 38 and page 40, right?
Mr. Bradley, we didn't touch the step movements. The steps are the same for the
Sir,
1920, for
sir, I'm telling
2020.
you, page
21.
40 of the new contract, and look at page 38, 39, and 40 of the old contract. If you look at the new contract, it does move on 20, year 20, $70,585, bumps up to $76,784 instantly, which is a 9% increase.
But Mr. Bradley, you're saying there's steps 23, 24, and they're not there.
Not on page 40 of the
They're
new
not there at all in the
contract.
contract.
Yeah, on the
20
old
plus.
contract,
There
they
is
were
no
fixed
other
for a
steps, Mr. Bradley. So I don't even know what document you're referring
I'm
to.
referring to the new document, sir. It's listed. You provided it to us. This is why
Mr.
we.
Bradley, you're comparing a 2018 salary schedule to 2021. There were changes there. It's been frozen for these 2 years, though.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
It
who
doesn't
did the
matter,
lieutenant.
Mr. Fuller.
The
He
question
won't-
is,
he
why
won't
is there?
understand.
So hold on. Why is there a 9% increase on year 20, when in the past we had them frozen from 20 to 23 for a period of time? Why would you make that change? Why would you not
Bradley, you're
review
talking about the
that?
previous contract.
I'm looking at the previous contract, page 38. Do you have it in front of you? I
That's
emailed it to
irrelevant
you.
to this
I emailed it to you, sir.
Yes, you
have a
emailed
copy.
the 2016, you emailed the 2012 to 2016.
I also emailed the 2016 to 2020, sir. And on page 38 of that contract, it just shows that this board did not review this document.
Mr.
and they
Bradley,
are
I don't even know
they're
what
not
you're
prepared.
comparing to. The
Look at
salary
page
schedule
38.
did not move. It
Page
didn't
38.
increase.
Sorry, page
1920 salary schedule reads the same for 2021 and 21,
How can I put it up on my screen and you can't do it on yours? Page 38 of the 2016 to 2020 contract. And then go to page 40 of the latest 20 to 22 contract.
Mr. Cleaver, I think he's pointing out that the salary schedule that used to pay the teachers in 2018 is different from the salary schedule that was used to pay the teachers in 2020, both of which were part of the previous contract.
Correct.
I'd like to also point out that the salary schedule used to pay the teachers in 2019 to 2020, or 2019 to 2020 is the same schedule that we're using this year as part of the previous
You're
contract.
finally
and
looking
will
at
be
it
used
now.
next
With
year.
from a negotiation standpoint, when they made that contract back in 2020, 2016 to 2020, they snuck in this problem. It was bad.
Ask the previous business
It was
administrator.
it was bad. The previous business, the whole cabal was involved. I'm sure of it. But the reality is,
Pardon?
the whole cabal was involved. I'm sure.
Whole
But the
cabal,
reality
yeah,
is,
whole cabal, everybody and their brother.
Larry, you're untrustworthy. But and you're arrogant, and you just shut everybody down.
Mr.
And now
Stern, I'm trying to follow.
now he's trying to mute.
Where are we?
I'm trying to say that the
Item A, we've had discussion on item A.
No,
under
you can't.
personnel
Wait a second. We saw people with their hand raised, and you're trying to shove through $20 million when you don't have a budget. But here you have a stable pay environment for years 20 through 23, and then you had a jump at 24 and plus. And now, through the great negotiation of Rita, she continues.
Mr. Bradley, there is no
It had
step
nothing to do with
24.
the salary schedule previously that is carried in
Yeah,
from
look
the
at it, page
1620
38 of the old
contract,
contract.
sir.
Look at page 38 of the old contract.
No, sir, you're looking at it incorrectly.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yes,
looking
you
at
are.
it as a business owner that has
No,
a
you're-
responsibility to negotiate with my staff to
You
get
also
benefits.
understand that once
to be
they hit
given
that
to
level,
students.
that is done. That level stops. There is no more movement after that on a base salary perspective.
One more time.
Oh, one more time. Do you
Number
understand
20,
that?
I agree.
You understand?
At year 20 to year 21, or step 20 to step 21.
There's no 21 on the current salary schedule.
It says over step 20, sir. Over step 20. So over step 20, to go from 20 to over step 20 is a 9% increase.
5 years ago. Why was something done 5 years ago? I don't know.
But that doesn't mean you carry it forward.
Well, if you get an agreement where the salary schedule stays the
That's
same,
our
you
job.
do.
That's our job. So the job is to make sure you negotiate this contract properly, not carry
Okay,
mistakes
that,
forward.
okay,
and
you
then
made
also
your
make sure
point.
you can
Is
afford
there
it.
any other points you'd
and
like
you
to
have
make?
to make sure you can stop shutting me up. Make sure you
No,
can
you
afford
keep
it.
rambling on the same thing. Would you
No,
like to
I'm
make
telling
any
you
other
that we didn't
points?
negotiate this contract properly for the best
You
interest
couldn't
of the community.
negotiate the contract because of your arrogance and your belligerence when we tried to meet with the professional group.
Absolutely not. You have a
That's
problem
totally
here.
true.
My job was to get a professional
Absolutely true,
negotiator.
David. No
I
one
didn't
wants to meet
negotiate
with
this
you
contract.
because you cannot be contained.
No, there's definitely containment. There's
Just in this
responsibility.
example, we can't
My
even
containment
talk.
was to we hire somebody to do this.
We have a
Anybody
roll
would hire
call
someone to
vote.
do this.
Mr.
Done.
Why would you allow
call vote,
Rita
Mr.
and Nathan
Pineo,
to do
please.
this? Is it because you are part of the
Mr.
PSEA
Nathan
PAC?
Fuller,
Is this
Yes.
payback, political payback?
Mr. Stephen
Larry?
Holland,
Yes, and I would also like to add, thank you, Nate. Thank you, Rita, for all the time you put in working on this contract. Thank you to the teachers for accepting it. And let's now move on. Thank you.
Steve,
Mrs.
they
Gail
didn't.
Mahalik?
They offered it. Steve, they offered it, and you're part of the hometown team that took PAC money.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
No,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No, not without a professional negotiator.
Mr. Richard Belts,
No,
Mr. David Bradley,
It not only needs to be done after the budget, but also I agree with Joy that a professional negotiator should review this contract prior to releasing it and giving all this money that the taxpayers can't afford. And you have a lot of other issues in this thing as well, but that's the main one. Thank you. The teachers do a great job,
and what's your vote? I'm
but
sorry.
the Cadillac program that we're giving away and paying for inside of this contract isn't in their best
We
interest.
are in the
or-
middle of the roll call vote, please.
Isn't in their best interest or ours.
What's
Mr.
your
Larry
vote, Mr.
Stern,
Bradley? Did you vote, Mr. Bradley, or not? Mr. Bradley, your vote?
Yeah, I voted for your resignation, Larry. I said no. We need to do
Thank
the
you very
budget
much.
first.
Yes.
You need to do the
We're
budget
getting all
first.
that.
You need to get rid of the gold-plated Cadillac program. You need to give the teachers a proper raise, but not 9%. And you need to make sure that you do it in a way that is beneficial to the entire community so we can
5
afford
yes,
it
4 no,
because
motion
the budget
carries.
is there.
On to item B, I need a motion and a second to approve the following candidates. for
The motion
employment
does
in
not
accordance
carry
with
if
the
you don't have
respective
more than a
contract.
certain number of people on the vote.
1,
So
Joanna.
moved, Steve.
2,
Can you please review the roll call on that vote, please, and tell us the number of people that voted for and against this?
Coach 5-4, Mr. Bradley.
And how many do you need to spend money, Mr. Filer?
5-4.
How many do you need to spend
5.
money? Sorry?
5.
So I have a motion by Mr. Holland. I'm looking for a second on item B.
Second, Wayne.
I have a second by Mr. Wentz on item B. Any questions on item B? Roll call vote, Mr. Pineo, please, on item B. Thank you.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes,
Mrs. Gail Mahalik, Mrs. Gail Mahalik, absent. Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No,
Mr. Richard Belts,
no,
Mr. David Bradley,
No, lack of information. We should have these people reviewed. Thank you.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 no, 1 absent. Motion
Okay.
carries.
Thank you. On item C, I need a motion and a second to approve the attached list for candidates for 2021 substitute list pending necessary paperwork as per the enclosure number 17.
so moved, Steve.
Second, Wayne.
I have a motion by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Wentz on item C. Any questions on item C, please? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
no,
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
no,
Mr. Richard Belts,
no,
Mr. David Bradley,
No, the district lacks a.
Mr.
proper
Nathan
process.
Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes,
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
5 yes, 4 no, motion carries.
On to item D, I need a motion and a second to approve the following request for athletic coaching and manager candidates as per contracted rates, pending any necessary paperwork as per the enclosure number 18. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Nathan.
Second, Steve, whoever.
I have a first by Mr. Fuller, a second by Mr. Holland. Any questions on item D?
I have one. In my board packet, I received a letter from an individual. I wasn't sure if anyone else on the board had received that letter. Can we please get a confirmation of whether or not this student, or past student, I should say, that was a member of the softball group, received that letter? Can I please check with that prior to moving forward with this athletic hire and candidates?
Dave, can you repeat that? You sounded really far away.
Yeah, I apologize. So I received a letter from an individual. It was addressed to me as a board member, and I want to see if anyone else on this board received this concern of oversight for our athletic staff. Did anyone else get this letter?
Not me.
Mr. Bradley, you said this was in our board packet?
No, there was no
It was in the board packet.
information.
Yes, it was in my board packet.
This was a letter that was only sent to Mr. Bradley regarding that. But
did you get a copy of it, Mr. Cleaver?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So did any other board member get a copy of it?
I did not share any of that information. I didn't discuss it. Again, I did touch base. There's no name on that letter. I currently.
There's names on this letter. It's just not specifically the person who wrote it.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
There's no names on the letter. And there's also no documentation of anything. Currently, the coaches are all evaluated by Mr. Spots. I did check with Mr. Spots. He's not aware of any issue either. And also the head coach, I believe, also did get the letter. And even currently, there is former players who are assistant coaches underneath our current softball coach.
So the statement that you're making is you received this letter and the board was not copied, but apparently this person saw fit to recognize that at least if I got it, I would read it and make sure that it was shared within our board, because it is incredibly crucial to the safety of our students that we properly vet and hire coaches and candidates. So the question becomes, why did you not give this to your entire board if it was given to me for this board meeting?
Mr. Bradley, I was not aware that you were the only one who got this until it was received. And if you look, there's no name or no information. And I immediately talked to Mr. Spots and checked to see if there was any documentation, because again, with no name, and even to the point of violation of whoever this wrote, saying that a position should be held by a female person.
But the reality is, regardless of an anonymous tipster, we have a responsibility under Safe to Say. We have a responsibility to our community.
We did that, Mr. Bradley. We went to Mr. Spots. I questioned him right away and asked, the coaches are all evaluated. And so we did check into it. And again, there was no name or no description of anyone else to contact.
I would think
it's an anonymous letter that's not signed by anyone.
In my opinion, whereas they wanted to be anonymous, and their exact words at the end of the anonymity was, "My name withheld due to politics involved in the school and retaliation that can occur to family members." Now that is a stark statement, that they literally tried to hide their identity for fear of retaliation. Now, I've seen what happens within this district. I've seen what board members have done when someone wants to speak critically of some of our precious
Mr. Bradley,
staff members.
again,
And
I think it's important to know that you went and that it was received and checked on immediately, and there is no validation of any of this occurring, and there's not even a signature
Are
on
you
this.
going to share this with your board?
Nor is there, you could share it with whoever you want, Mr. Bradley, not that you wouldn't anyway. But the reality is we did check into it, we investigated, we had no documentation, we have evaluations from past players who have not, made any comments like this, and who also do put their names to it as well. But again, this is just, an anonymous letter that we received, but to say we didn't look into it, yes, we did.
Is any of the board members disappointed that our administration did not provide this to them, and only through the foresight of this individual that I got a copy of it?
Yes, I wish that I knew more of what was going on in the district so that I could help to improve our quality and make sure that none of our students are disappointed.
Ms. Spears, I wish I could share the information and get through an executive session to share a lot of personnel information. Unfortunately, with Mr. Bradley involved in those exec sessions and the comments that he made, example, before this meeting, it is absolutely impossible to get through stuff. So there is a lot of information that I wish I could get to as an executive session type material. However, with Mr. Bradley, it's very difficult. But again, this letter was received and it was checked into immediately.
What you're saying is it's impossible for you to circle the wagons when someone is here shining a light of transparency upon those wagons upon which you are circling.
Sure, Mr. Bradley, that's what you like.
That's exactly what we're trying to hear, and that's where you're backpedaling.
That's an excuse. I mean, I think a person needs to keep doing their job correctly, regardless of whether or not they like how someone else is doing their job.
It's not about doing the job, Ms. Spears. It's the fact that we investigated this and there's no information or anything that would lead this to be
but wait, the investigation was done by the people that is being challenged. That's not impartial. That's not an impartial investigation.
I'm not being challenged.
Most definitely, most definitely yourself and Mr. Spots are being challenged in this letter, sir. If you do not see a responsibility from a complainant that it goes to the management and ultimately to us as a board, that's irresponsible. We have a duty to these students. We have to protect the students and we have to save this community. And not only save them financially, but save them from actions that may have led to these consequences.
Again, Mr. Bradley,
this is exactly the reason. This is exactly the reason.
Unfortunately, this individual didn't sign their name. We could have went to them.
It shouldn't matter to us whether they signed their name or not. That shouldn't bother somebody. It's not required.
Right, but what I'm saying, Mr. Bradley, is for when we went and looked at this, the documentation that we have, and anything that we have no documentation from evaluations or anything else that any type of these actions have occurred.
But you discounted this person's comment because
there is no person, then there's no signature, Mr. Bradley.
So one more time, you're discounting this person.
We don't even have an email. We'd have nothing.
I understand, but you're discounting this person's identity because they didn't sign something. I can respect that there's a certain amount of concern there, but then you also discounted because they thought that the position of softball coach should be held by a female. And I agree that that's their opinion, but that shouldn't discount the ability or the responsibility of an impartial investigation as to the actions that this is alleging. They might be true, they might not be true, but we should not use yourself and an athletic director to be investigating issues associated with yourself and the athletic director. Because
Mr. Bradley, who would you
then
question?
back to the, and it's back to the
question, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you. And then it goes back
Who
to
would
this
you
board.
question?
What do you mean, who did I question?
Who would you question in this investigation?
Who would I question? I'm a board member. I
No,
would
that's what I'm asking.
I know, so bear with me. I would assign a team. I would assign our team to investigate this matter. I would pick 3 impartial people, and I'd have them in a group because the odds of them investigating it effectively without any
What individuals are we going to call to question for the investigation is what I'm asking.
That's our responsibility under Pennsylvania School Code, and it's under the LASD policy, and it's exactly how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to have 3 people that we assign to.
I have no more further comments, Mr.
I know you don't, but you asked the question. The procedure is that we assign 3 individuals to that task force, at which point they would then decide from a board's perspective of what we need to be able to adjudicate matters of how they move forward. And then we give them those marching orders. We need to have this documented, this documented, this documented. And then from there, we can evaluate it. That's how the process works. There has to be due process. You can't have people willy-nilly making accusations and not have them checked. You also can't hide an accusation and discount it, because what it does is exacerbate the problem. To not know that is irresponsible. I think this needs to be addressed. And I think that this motion should be held off with until such time that we correct any procedural issues we have in the method to which we are hiring staff members. It just makes sense.
For any other comment on item D, thank you for your input, Mr. Bradley, and maybe the rest of the board can receive a letter and we can figure out how to move forward on that. But it's not related to the coaching manager candidates.
How do you know? Did you get a copy of it, Larry? Hold on, Larry, did you get a copy of it?
I did not, sir.
Okay, then you don't know that it doesn't relate to this, and I think it does. So,
well,
that's
Mr.
all
Bradley,
there's
no on our agenda here today.
There's no softball coach, Mr. Bradley, so he certainly
away.
does know it doesn't.
All on you, bud.
Thank you.
You have already stated it was softball. Thank you.
But the problem we have is how the problem you have is how the athletic people are hired, sir. That's what's being addressed in this meeting. Yes.
And that's
And how
number
they're being vetted.
That's number 400 of the problems that you see every day that's in our district.
It is a problem within our district.
About anything.
It is a problem within our district. It's a cronyism problem within our district because nobody has a third-party review. It's pushed through. You've canceled personnel committee meetings. You prevent them.
Okay, now we're on to roll call vote, Mr. Tenio, please, on item D.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
No?
Mr. Richard Belt,
No.
Mr. David Bradley,
No.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik, Mrs. Gail Mahalik, absent. Mr. Larry Stern,
Yes.
5 yes, 3 no, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item E. I need a motion and a second to approve the following requests for pre-approval of courses and programs of study for continuing education. Employee 1434, employee 1434. Coursework is listed. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Who is with the first, please? Is that you, Mr. Bradley, with the first on this motion?
Yeah, of course, Larry. The person you ignore all the time. Thank you.
Well, maybe if you would wait to speak, once I'm done speaking, I would be able to hear you, sir. So I have a motion by Mr. Bradley, a second by Mr. Wentz, I believe it was.
Yes.
On item E. Any questions on item E? Hearing none, we'll entertain a roll call vote. Ms. Perkinio, please.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes?
Mr. Richard Belt, Mr. Richard Belt, absent. Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 absent. Motion carries.
On to item F. Need a motion and a second to acknowledge FMLE leave for the following employees not to exceed 12 weeks. Employee 1614. And second, please.
Motion. So moved.
Second.
At first by Mr. Bradley, a second by Mr. Belts. Any questions or concerns on item F? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Perkinio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes?
Mr. Richard Belt, Mr. Richard Belt, absent. Mr. David
Sorry.
Bradley,
I had a break in service here, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern. 9 yes, motion carries.
On to programs, I need a motion and a second to approve the 2021-2022 Lehighton Area School District calendar as per enclosure number 19.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
I have a motion by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any questions on the calendar as it stands for the 21-22 school year? Thank you. Hearing none, roll call vote on the district calendar, please, Ms. Pertinio.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On item B, I need a motion and a second to approve the summer 2021 Lehighton Area School District Summer Camps, Academics, and Adventures. This program will be funded through the ESSER grant. Dates and locations are as follows in your agenda, please. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I couldn't determine who was motioning in a second.
I'll second it. Steve.
Okay, who first did that one, please?
Wayne.
Thank you. I have a first by Mr. Wentz, a second by Mr. Holland. On motion B, any questions or concerns? Roll call vote, Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item C. I need a motion and a second to approve the Title I summer reading and math programs to be held at the elementary center. Tentative dates are August 2nd through the 13th of 2021 for math program and July 12th through the 23rd, 2021 for the reading program. Camps will be paid using 2021 title funds.
So moved, Steve.
Second by Nathan.
I have a first by Mr. Holland, a second by Mr. Fuller. Any comments on item C?
Larry, since this is all funded under the Title I funds, which come federally, I believe, correct? The question I have is, how much Title I funds do we get, and can they be used for things other than Title I programs, since we're a Title I school?
The Title I funds are directed towards Title I programs primarily that can be used for Title I programs through the school, but they have to still have a Title I affiliation of some type with them. So that all our students are eligible for title services. However, they have to be a service that title offers. We can't just use the funds to go, purchase something else. They have to have a Title I affiliation with them. And we receive approximately about between Title I, Title II, Title 2D, and Title 4, we receive approximately about $400,000 a year.
But anyone can
And
participate.
the majority of that is for benefits and salaries of Title I staff that we currently have.
But anyone that in our district, since we're a Title I school, would be entitled to go to this event.
This is at the elementary level for the Title I students.
So
this Title I reading program is just at the elementary level.
But anyone within the elementary center
It would be limited, and they would have to qualify for it as well regarding they wouldn't have learning loss or been receiving title services throughout the school year to be eligible.
So it's only for Title I students.
No, if they're not currently in Title I, but still at the end of the year, the teacher feels they would benefit from this, they would be able to participate in this program. But all students are automatically eligible if they were receiving title services throughout the year.
So then it's selective after that, and is it to a function of the participation? I mean, is it limited to the number of students?
We do try to keep a low staff to student ratio. So once we get all the numbers together, that'll depend on the staff that'll be hired for this type of program. But there are set aside funds that need to be used for these type of programs in title. There's set aside funds that need to be used for different type of community outreach programs as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item C? Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote for item C. Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item D, I need a motion and a second to approve the credit recovery summer school for the Lehighton Area Middle School and High School. Item D. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Steve.
I have a first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Holland. Thank you. Any comments or concerns on item D, please? Hearing none, we'll roll call vote. Ms. Pertinio, please.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item E, I need a motion and a second to approve community-based instruction, CBI, trips for the remainder of the 2021 school year, observing all necessary COVID-19 mitigation precautions. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Wayne.
Second by Nathan.
First by Mr. Wentz, and second by Mr. Fuller. Any questions on CBI trips? Mr. Cooper, I have a question. I don't recall seeing this on the agendas previously. Could you explain
Right,
what
the
it is?
CBI trips are for our students who need work-based training, mostly through their IEP training or through some type of work-study program. So the students are, they go to Giant or go different places, and they have a staff member who will assist them based upon their community required experience, but mostly is life skill type training or job related training.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on item E? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
For item E, I need a motion and a second to approve the following school enrichment journey requests, observing all necessary COVID-19 mitigation precautions. Number 1, LAEC 4th grade.
Walk through Lehighton, learning about local history. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved,
So
Wayne.
moved, Steve.
The first by Mr. Wentz, the second by Mr. Holland. Any comments on E? Hearing none, we will go with a roll call vote. Ms. Virginio, please.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes, and I think that's an awesome activity for Mrs. Cressley to take part of. Thank you.
9 yes, motion carries.
On to item F, I need a motion and a second to approve the use of school properties for the following requests 1 through 9. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
And a first by Ms. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz. Any discussion on item F? Hearing none, with a roll call vote, Ms. Virginio, please.
Miss Joy Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belt,
Yes.
Mr. David Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Nathan Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland,
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Rita Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz,
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern.
Yes.
9 yes, motion carries.
Item 12, new business for discussion. Mr. Cleaver?
Yes, so you received information for the Carbon Leader Intermediate Unit board members that are be elected by mail ballot. So Vinnie, I know you received information too as well for them.
Yes, I have received, we should receive letters at home, I believe, from the IU.
Yes, and that'll be, yep, that'll be a mail-in ballot.
And they're requesting that those mail-in ballots be returned.
Yes.
Any other new business?
I have one quick question. On the payroll report, it shows that we had a person covering the Saturday detention. How many students did we have in Saturday detention?
I could get that number for you though, Mr. Bradley, but I do know we run that once a month. That used to be every week, but now we have a Saturday detention that we do run once a month. But I could get that information for you. I could get you the last several months.
I have a question for the superintendent. Couple of weeks ago in the Buildings and Grounds meeting, we were presented with an architectural bid for the roof replacement, which was like about, I think, $20,000. And we had a discussion, and Steve, Wayne, and I had agreed that we would pursue additional bids. And I remember that both you and Kyle were concerned about the timeline, and you pursued additional bids, and they were due last week. And I thought we'd be seeing those bids today, considering that you were worried about moving things along. So did we get additional bids, and when is the board going to see that information?
We did get additional bids. I believe we did get one from Carbon Engineering. So we will have them for the Buildings and Grounds Committee to review. So you could see them all side by side. I do not believe we received any other bids from the individual organizations that I believe you emailed Mr. Spots about some of the area ones that you were familiar with, but I'm not 100% sure that we did not receive any other ones, only from Carbon Engineering.
Joy, did you say this was for a roof?
Correct. It was an architectural bid to produce roof drawings and specifications and to oversee bidding and construction.
So we had a feasibility study done years ago, and during that process, we learned that roofing in the state of Pennsylvania, with a company called Carlisle Roofing, as an employer of people in Pennsylvania, has joined together with government agencies to save everyone all this money and waste, and just go off the government purchase program the same way you would do for, say, a government program for purchasing computers, where they have one of the few efficiencies of government is the consolidation of purchasing. So why would you do any of these things as buildings and grounds when the state of Pennsylvania Department of Education and all government agencies have access to this roof contract that we can just pull from? I mean, it saves everybody money. Why wouldn't we do that?
That is not guaranteed that going out to bid, you wouldn't get a lower cost. I believe we found that out when we went through the experience with Train, when we got a price from them who was, on the list. And then we went out and got more information, more bids, as you always tell us we should. And we actually had someone who came in under that amount. Now, that may be a possibility. I'm not familiar with that. I did reach out to CCTI, who recently did a roofing project too, which they did put out for bid for their warehouse that they have up there. So I'm not familiar with a state contractor. I do know we did work before previously with another roofing company. I hate to have to say the name. Tremco, I believe. But as far as that, I'm not aware that, this could be done on a state list. But however, before the Buildings and Grounds meeting, we could possibly check on that as well.
But to not even review that opportunity is...
Mr. Bradley, I think the more important thing is that you want to go to a company without getting competitive bids. I think we learned our lesson before that.
No, sir. That's not what I said. You misunderstand logic and reason.
You're talking about a state. You're talking about a state bid list, Mr. Bradley. So
no, sir. I'm not talking about a state bid list, sir. I am not talking about a state bid list. I'm talking about the State Department of Education pre-purchases roofs for districts throughout the state. And all you do is you raise your hand, you say, I need this many square feet, and then they sell you your roofing material, and then you can bid the contractor if you'd like or whatever. But the materials are greatly subsidized by the state purchasing program for this very mundane process of putting a roof on one of the many government buildings throughout the state of Pennsylvania, definitely favoring a manufacturer of roofs that happen to be within the state of Pennsylvania that hires Pennsylvanians. I mean, this is kind of what you're missing
there. The cost for this projected roof, I believe, Mr. Father, would need to be under requirements as far as hourly wages too. Correct.
Again, there's a program through the state.
I'm asking Mr. Father.
Yeah, they definitely.
You can't supplant product and then have to go get someone else to bid it. I believe you're breaking several laws as far as the bidding requirements.
No, sir, you still got to bid this process. That has nothing to do with that. Why are you going down? That's definitely conflating an issue.
You're saying you're purchasing the material.
No, sir. I'm saying that there's a state program for roofs under the Department of Education and also under the entire state governments. We should review what the process is. I'm sure that the state does not break its own law like the Lehighton School District tends to do against our Lehighton policies, but to accuse me of that is ridiculous because we're trying to hold you accountable. However, you should take the responsible party and instead of arguing over this, just say, yes, sir, we're going to go look at the Department of Education. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley, unfortunately, if you could send us that information, we could review it at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting, but like I said, offhand, I'm not familiar with that.
What was the approximate cost of the roof and the feasibility study? Do we know?
I don't have that information in front of me, but I want to say about 170,000. I know we looked at two different options, the estimated cost for a metal roof versus a shingled roof too.
Yeah, the one thing I know is building products are very expensive at this point in time, very expensive. Okay, thanks for the input on the roofing project and such. So we'll go on to director's concerns. Okay, how about the courtesy of the floor? Ms. Pertino, did you receive any requests? I think you said Ms. Belofsky, maybe? Is that correct? Mr. Cleaver, could you please handle courtesy of the floor public comment, please?
Yep, I believe we have Brian Shaner.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My first question is for Mr. Fuller. Several months ago, when we were discussing contract negotiations, I believe you committed to me that you were going to look into hiring a professional in the negotiation sphere. What did your research show? Why did we decide to not hire a negotiator?
I believe at the time that statement was made, my exact statement was, I'm definitely not opposed to a professional negotiator, and I definitely see value in them. At that stage, our negotiations were already very close, and within the space of a couple more meetings, we got across the finish line. Those final differences were resolved. So it just did not get to the point where one was either needed or felt one would be helpful, and where we could have even got one in time. It would have dragged the process out longer, certainly not helped it finish faster.
So you negotiated a contract for over a year without a professional negotiator. Meanwhile, on the other side, that's what these people do for a living. I think it's quite embarrassing. And I think you guys really should look at putting your egos aside and remember that you're fiscally responsible to the members of this community as well as stewards of education for these students. And it's embarrassing that you wouldn't hire a professional negotiator to contract with a professional union. I think that's despicable. My next question is on the Huddle Athletic Program. What happens if we need to remove it from the budget after we've already approved the contract today? Is there any cost to us if we're not able to afford to have it in the budget that is apparently $1.2 million off? Anybody on the board can answer, please.
Mr. Shane, can you repeat your question about, I'm sorry.
Yep, so we've approved the Huddle Athletic Program here today, but we don't have a budget that's balanced at this point in time. We've talked about the different facets of being fiscally responsible and making sure we're not spending more than we take in. So what happens if we get to the point where we've now agreed to this $11,000 contract and we can't afford it in the budget? Are we on the hook are we committed to pay this $11,000? Is there any type of cancellation fee if we decide to no longer offer those services?
I'm not aware, Mr. Shaner, of any type of cancellation fee. I do know that the contract, as far as any type of payment, would not go out until the board has approved the budget. So anything that we approve for the next year's budget, once that's approved, is when we would send out invoices and different things and also start paying things. Because it's the way July 1st to June 30th is the way the budget cycle works. So even teachers, even if we have money for supplies in the budget, and the budget is approved, we do not send that out even till after July 1st.
So if we get if we get to the budget process and we decide that we cannot afford this $11,000 for these sports films and recruiting and all of that stuff, what happens with that contract? It just goes away?
No, we wouldn't send that contract back actually until then to make sure that we are approving everything.
So we're not technically approving it until the budget's approved?
It's just right. It's just approval of that. We could sign the contract once that is approved. And then once the budget is approved, we will send that out right away so the equipment can be sent to us.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And then I would just like to ask a board member, any board member, but preferably somebody from the finance committee, to ask for forecasts from the company that spoke at the beginning as far as what we would need to happen for the move to make fiscal sense. It doesn't make sense to spend $2 million if there's no guarantee, or if we don't have an understanding of what we need from the bond rating people, as well as interest weights when our loans come up to call. So I would hopefully ask one of you to request those forecasts from that company. Thank you.
Mr. Shaner, could you actually email me that and I will send that right to PFM?
I sure will.
Mr.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Shaner, I wanted to ask you earlier, and now that it's public comment, I'd love to get your opinion on this. When we did the negotiations, I definitely agree that we should have had a professional. It was irresponsible of this government agency of volunteers to think that they could compete against PSEA. However, let's face it, a lot of them were getting political contributions from a PSEA PAC. But the question I have for you is, if you looked at this contract, could you calculate out how much this contract costs this district in total? Not just the $159,000 or the $400,000 differential, but I don't believe this board understood the total number that this contract reflects. And when you look at the budget that's millions of dollars off, I think that that was already pre-baked in, and it seems like you're going to be on the hook for this dollar amount. Would you like to please ask this board what that total contract was that they just approved?
I think that's a fair question. As somebody who has experience in negotiating union contracts, you have to be able to go in with your bottom line and know what you are able to spend when it comes to that. And you've got to make moves in other places to get to that financial number. So does anybody know, Rita or Nathan, what the total additional cost is for us in this contract?
I believe Mr. Shaner and Mr. Bradley, I did touch base to inform everyone earlier that for the 2021 school year, it's $7,450. That covers
That's the additional. I'm saying what the total contract cost is. How much does this contract, what it was just approved, how many millions of dollars was just approved to be paid to 159 employees of the district? And just so we all remember that about 10% of the district went to charter schools, and charter schools are not a cost to the district. They're a savings to the district. But
Mr. Bradley, that is very inaccurate.
no, it is not accurate.
Yes, it
is.
is.
For us to educate a student versus a charter school to educate a student,
That
paid in to do
is
it is way less.
so much false information you're
It
sharing.
is not.
That is not
It's not
accurate
But
at
what's the total?
all.
What's the total
If
dollar
every
value of
student
this
came
contract?
back to this district currently that's in cyber school, it would be a savings of about $3 million. So
And what
please
happens is
don't.
the other way. How about if everybody went to cyber school, Mr. Cleaver? What would the cost to the district's budget be then?
I don't have that, but what I'm
Thank
saying
you.
is
So why
you're
don't you do
saying
both
that
sides
it
of that?
will
If you're
cost
going
the
to go down this,
district.
if
You
you're
are
going to go down this pathetic.
inaccurate, Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, it's
You
not inaccurate.
continue
Go down
to-
both sides.
to
Go down both sides of
constantly
that pendulum
false
and see.
information.
Yeah, it's not. But at the same time, what is the total cost of this contract, Rita or Nathan? How much money does this contract allocate in our budget?
Mr. Bradley, first of all, if you'd like to ask me a question, ask me yourself instead of putting other people up to it.
I'm just saying, he brought it up, and I
Ask
figured
them.
he
Let
should
me
ask.
finish. Reciting the question to them and then asking them to ask it. Second, you have the same contract on your desk that I have on mine. Thirdly, we can add up many of the numbers in this contract. Some of those items are unknown. Health insurance is one, for instance, where we are committing to provide a service and we do not know exactly what that service will cost. So it is impossible to put an exact firm dollar amount on this contract.
How about the number of teachers we have, the number of steps they're currently in, and multiplying those out by their salaries? Did you have that information available to you when you were negotiating this contract? We do not as a board.
Yes, we did.
And what was that number, Rita? What was the cost for the number of employees and the step value with what was negotiated, plus the bonus that was provided to the 159 employees of this district?
As Mr. Fowler just told you, we don't have a definite number at all because we are faced with moving targets. We don't know how many teachers there will be. Will there be new teachers? Will teachers retire? Will people go with the HSA plan, or will they stay with the other plan? This is a moving target, Dave. What we did was run the numbers for the next 2 years of this contract, and this contract is something that, while it would be difficult, we can do it. And that's all I'm going to say on the subject.
So when the things that are fixed, which are current, do you have those numbers? or you just made the whole thing a WAG? And is transportation still going to be available to this community? Rita, I'm asking you directly.
And David, I told you I'm not talking, that was it. That was my statement. I'm done.
Okay, so Mr. Shaner, can you please ask Rita?
I'm
'Cause
sorry,
just
Ms.
like
Spinelli,
Nathan,
do
he
we
doesn't
have
wanna
a-
do it, you know?
Do we have an
Mr.
estimated
Shaner,
cost?
I am not a pawn. I'm sorry. I gave my answer. It's the same answer to you that I would give to Mr. Bradley.
But your answer wasn't an answer. You
and your
Listen, that's not an answer.
aren't really right either. So that's all I'm going to say. If you would like to sue me, get the police, whatever, because I ignored the public, please feel free to do so. I gave the answer. That's my answer. It's the same for you, for Barb, for Nixon Barrington, and for Carrie Sittler. That's it. That's my answer.
I believe, Mr. Rarick, when we did and looked at the budget as well, that presentation Mr. Rarick did, the amount was also posted there for the upcoming budget. Is that correct, Mr. Rarick, for the salaries for the teachers?
Yes, in the budget presentation that was posted on the website, there was a figure posted there to cover the total cost of salaries as well as PSERs and other deductions that take place with pay.
Okay, thank you. I'll go out there and look for that. I do appreciate that information. I do not appreciate Ms. Spinelli's attitude, though.
And I don't appreciate yours, sir.
Ms. Bose?
Yes, I wanted to clarify on the huddle contract because I was in the athletic meeting and I remember hearing about it. Currently, we pay $6,000 for huddle. So it would only be an additional $5,000. And there were some really good ideas on how to pay for that and maybe even make some money off of using the huddle contract that was presented tonight.
Yes, that is correct. There was discussion regarding the contract currently with Lehigh Valley, also looking at the possibility and discussing it further at committee meetings for additional games, for example, to be charged for attending as well, which would help offset that cost. So yes, Ms. Bose, you are absolutely correct.
And plus there would be cameras put in the gymnasium.
Yep.
For basketball to use in the same manner. But there were some really good ideas on how to offset that extra $5,000 cost. So it's not just something that is thrown out there for sports. It was nice to hear people coming up with ways to pay for it so that it wouldn't cost the district extra money. And that to me is a step in the right direction. But it didn't get mentioned when Dave first asked the question or when someone else just asked the question. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware it's not $11,000 per se, because we're already have a contract with them that costs about $6,000. So it's a little over $5,000 extra.
And currently this would be able to be used by more athletic programs as well, the way it's.
Right, absolutely. It wouldn't be just football.
Right, that is correct.
And that's basically what I wanted to say. I think there was something else, but I didn't write it down, so it can wait till next time.
Barrington?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
All right. So my understanding is that this section is more like, it doesn't have to do with anything that was discussed today. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right. So my question is actually to the board. This is something that I'm curious about. What is the school's stance on critical race theory? Because it's actually a two-part question, and my second question depends on the answer that's given.
Actually, and as the spokesman, I don't have an opinion on it, and I'm not going to touch that topic.
Okay, so all right, let me rephrase it. Is the school itself actively engaging in critical race theory?
Or if you're talking about more or less diversity training, not just limited to race theory, is that what you're referring to?
That will fall on the same spectrum, yes.
Yeah, so we do programs with diversity. We also do acceptance types programs. Of course, the different grade building levels, of course, they all look different. More so at the elementary level is more related to, how accepting people and, I want to say it's more of a positive behavior type program at the elementary level. Like a behavior management type thing, where students are taught and learn different diversity related type programs. And then again, that carries on to the middle school. We do have social workers who also do, I'll call them small group programs when it comes to diversity, and also a problem solving type activities. If it goes into a race or, some type of program like that, we do have 2 social workers here that'll step in and work with the students to try and address those issues. But it's more towards, the diversity piece, not just,
All right, because my whole thing is like as of late, I've been hearing about schools adopting this critical race theory, and I'm just gonna flat out say I'm not in support of it, mostly because now obviously it can't be seen because it's over Zoom, but I'm a Black male. I am married to a white woman. We have mixed children, and with the way how critical race theory is, it kind of leaves, there's no room for ambiguity to where my children don't fit into that nice little, into the quote unquote nice little spectrum that they have of, if you're a person of color, you're a victim, and if you're white, you're privileged and an oppressor. And like, well, because like I said, I'm bringing my children back from charter to public school for the next year. Well, that's my intention. And I just don't want my children to be caught in the crossfire of teachers teaching their personal political views and disguising it into the syllabus and as classroom lessons.
Yeah, there is no, political views from staff is not something that we would promote. And if it was brought to our attention, we would address it. And, really, if the parent would come to us with, concern like that, we would, encourage the parent and the teacher to really discuss it, because sometimes it's the teacher didn't, mean it to come out the way that maybe someone accepted it, so to speak. So yes, the political views in education, it's not an arena for any of that.
All right. I'm glad to hear, because I've been hearing a lot of that. A lot of teachers are pushing whatever their political view is, personally, I don't care. It's their business. It's their right as an American and as an adult to have their own personal view, political views. That's what that's what this country is based off of. I'm not saying that it's not allowed. I just don't want somebody to teach my children their political views. And worst of all, having it being disguised in a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that particular view for me is, that particular thing does more damage than it does help anything else. So that was just my concern, because I'm bringing my children in. Well, my plan is to bring my children back from charter to public school next school year. But hearing about that, that a lot of locations these teachers are utilizing this. I'm like, if this is something that's happening in this school, I'll just keep them back in charter where I know it's not happening.
Like I said, we look at it as diversity, teaching the kids acceptance in a broader scope, and it could be, a male and female type acceptance as well. So we keep a broad scope with that.
Mr. Nixon, this is Nathan Fuller. Also, if I could just interject, first, I look forward to having your students back in the district. As father of 3 daughters who are also in the district here, the biggest thing that I have found that I've appreciated with our district is the ability to meet, to get to know the teachers. Almost every single one of them that I've interacted with has been, open with their viewpoints, accepting of ours, and have both worked together to move our students and every student in the district forward. So just having that open line of communication, I've had nothing but a good experience with our teachers, and as they've walked that line between, their own personal opinion and, teaching the children what they need to know. Just want to say I've been very pleased with how that's played out in real life in the classrooms my students have been in.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'd like to make the statement that as a charter school student, you are in the district. The difference between being in a charter school and our school is you made that choice. You can make the choice to come back to a brick and mortar at Lehighton, virtual at Lehighton. The money follows the student in that regard because the benefits, whole reason we're here, that we have the right to go tax people and take their money from them, is to ensure that the educational benefits, free and public education, go to you and your student to whichever avenue you feel is best for your student. And that's a very important factor to make sure that the entire district aims towards letting people make that choice without any underlying issues.
I believe this Miss Sittler. Is this Miss Sittler? I believe. Miss Sittler? Hello, Miss Sittler? Hello? Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, we'll move to Mr. Krause. Mr. Krause? Hello, Mr. Krause?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to remind everybody that the ballots for the L-Tri-C at large member trustee will be due May 14th. So that's going to be coming up pretty quick. Also, just a couple of other things since we haven't been having reports. L-Tri-C received a grant for $2 million to help with dual enrollment in the early college program. So I know our guidance should be getting that information from L-Tri-C, but that should really help boost our dual enrollment for the Lehighton students. And the third thing is we also received some funds from the American Rescue Plan, which is part of the federal COVID relief, that is going to be for student debt payments. So hopefully if we have any students that are having trouble paying their existing loans and tuition fees, that will help bridge that gap for them as well. So that's all I wanted to share with the group tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. I'll try. Yes, this Ms. Sittler?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. You said that there was a $3 million cost for the students who are going to cyber school. Do you know what the approximate number is of students? 200, 300?
It's up near 250. I could get you the exact number because we do keep a rolling tally, but I don't have that in front of me, but I could get that to you.
Okay, so that's the cyber school. That's like CCA and REACH, not LAVA.
That is correct. That is out of district cyber programs.
Okay, and how many students are in LAVA, roughly?
I don't have that in front of me, but I could go back and look because we did do a presentation. If you look at our academic affairs online, we did do a presentation that had all those numbers broken down. I believe the month of February, we did do that, but I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but I do know we discussed that with the numbers at one of the academic affairs committee meetings.
So roughly, how many more students transferred to cyber school from this year to last year?
Oh, we doubled. No, actually, I should say Mr. Rarick, I believe, did a presentation. I think we were up to 100, I believe it was 170% more.
Okay, so if you guys, you said the last meeting that you were definitely 100% bringing buses back, and you will be able to handle those 250, 300, 350, 400 students that would come back.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was if they all came back.
If they all came back, let's just say everybody was tired of cyber school and everybody came back to the district. Are we going to be able to afford buses?
We would still be fine with the current busing programs that we have now. Yes.
Okay, so
the buses are in the budget that Mr. Rarick did present, did have transportation in it.
Okay, that's awesome.
Full transportation, sir, or what we have now?
David, I'm not talking to
I
you,
know,
please.
but he used a little double speak. Was it the full transportation or the transportation that we have now?
The current transportation that we have now is in the budget.
Okay, but not the full transportation like we used to have.
What are you considering full transportation? We're not at full
All district
transportation now
students.
only because of COVID. So it would go back to where, the students we would have the amount of buses that we currently have. But I'm sorry, Mr. Larry, go ahead.
We're looking for all students.
Wait, stop, David.
Yes.
So you're saying you have in the budget for next year the same amount for this year. What's the difference between the pre-COVID buses and the current COVID buses?
I believe Mr. Rarick has the amount when it was pre-COVID. I don't want to speak for him. I'll let.
So we will be going back to pre-COVID buses or not?
Yes.
Okay.
The pre-COVID number is approximately $1.3 million, which is full busing to what it was back in 2019 before COVID hit.
Thank you. That's really important. My next question, I know we were down at one point 3 Act 93 administrators, 10 professionals, and 21 support staff. Will we be getting any of them back?
We are looking in our current budget. We do have an additional guidance counselor coming back. We did propose as well a business/HR position that we tabled last year. We wanted to wait until we had a new business manager, which is Mr. Rarick, and now to see how that would fit in. Those programs are in, and currently the teachers that have retired that have resigned this year, we currently have a choral teacher posted and also a school psychologist position posted as well currently.
Okay. And my next question is about the support staff. I mean, if we're going to have, like, let's say 300-400 people coming back, we're going to need extra teachers.
If depending on where they would come back to, for example, if we had 25 kindergarten or say first graders come back, then yes, that would be an additional position if they would all come back. Now there's not 25 currently first graders in cyber school. They are sporadically spread out, and the majority of them are at the high school level and middle school level currently. And that there's a lot more flexibility in there just because the way the schedules are developed in different things. So, we would be able to bring them back in. But if there was a time where 30 kids came back in one grade level, for example, at the elementary level, then yes, that would be adding one too. And then this agenda too, we did approve a 2 support staff positions.
Right, I saw that.
Yes.
Okay, my next question is, will the supplementary staff be rehired for like the recess and lunch aides?
We currently have lunch aides in the budget proposal currently.
Okay.
That would all depend on, when we get more into the budget talks of how we're making things level out more, but there currently is lunch aids as part of that, 4 at the elementary, 2 at the middle school, and 2 at the high school. Not as many as we had, but they are added into the budget that are currently not there this year.
Okay, so if you only have 4 for the elementary center, how many usually stay in with them during lunch and how many usually go out with them for the recess?
Well, there's other ways to do it now because there's also duty assignments that we're utilizing as well for teachers. So it wouldn't just be them. It may be a support staff or a teacher that would be out there also supervising.
So then the teachers are going to have to take their turns out with the students.
Right. There is like I said, there's duties that teachers are assigned, and that may be, assigned duty, at that point.
Are we concerned though with the teachers being so taxed now that that's going to tax them even further?
Well, they're currently doing it now between support and teachers. So it'd be less of a load than we currently have now.
But there'll be more kids, so it'll probably equal out.
Well, there may be. I mean, that's our hope. I mean, our hope is that, we get all these students back. And if it gets to the point we have to evaluate it, there's nothing, that says we can't, propose, an additional 1 or 2 during the budget, especially if it's, bringing students back, which means it's additional revenue or is less of an expenditure going out than coming in.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you for answering them.
Thank you.
Ms. Sittler, I did look up the numbers for cyber school and LAVA. There's currently 206 students in cyber school and 214 students in our LAVA program.
Ms. Siller, did you hear that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did you say 206?
206 in cyber and 214 in LAVA.
214. Thank you.
Eric, Ed, where did you find that, on the district website, or is that information from you?
No, that's information that I pulled from my budget presentation.
Okay, because I'm looking on the academic affairs and other areas, I can't see it, but you're saying, is it on the web as well?
It was on my presentation that's on the website, yes.
Excellent. If you could send that to the board, that'd be helpful. We'll share it.
Okay, Mr. Stern, no other comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Autumn didn't have her. Oh, Mr. Stern, can you hear me?
Yes, one more, I think.
Yes, Autumn. I'm sorry. I didn't see the hand wasn't up, so sorry, Autumn.
I didn't raise my hand because I thought the courtesy to the floor paper was.
Sorry about it's very hard to hear you, Autumn. Could you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was sitting back to back. All right, I'm actually just going to read this off my paper because I'm a little tired now. So I'm here to represent the Borough of Lehighton. We currently reviewed our current and outstanding projects, and we found that the elementary center project has yet to be closed out. I know that Mr. Cleaver did follow up with our borough manager today, but we just felt that it was something that the school district, the school board should know about. Just to give you a little background, we received a letter September 5th of 2019 from EI Associates stating that they planned to submit the final closeout documents to the borough, and we have yet to receive them. We understand that the pandemic put a lot of things on hold, which is why we didn't pursue this, but we believe that this should be flagged as a priority now to finalize. The outstanding documents that we need are the as-built drawings, the easements, as well as the parking. We did receive the notice of termination from the stormwater erosion and sedimentation from EI Associates. That was triggered by the county's request for that. We're asking that all the documents be submitted to the borough by June 30th for review, to be recorded, for the school district to be in full compliance.
Yeah, thank you, Autumn. Yeah, I did talk to Nicole today, and I did also follow up with an email and a phone call to EI Associates on those outstanding items as well. So as soon as I hear back from them, I will, reach out to Nicole, and I even said maybe we could even get on a call just to make sure we're all on the same page with exactly what is needed.
Okay, I believe there is a letter from EI. May just see, I have it here. It's dated September 5th, 2019.
Yep.
And in that letter, there's 3 bullet points, so they are aware of what is outstanding.
Yeah, I did follow up with Rob Walsh, who actually wrote that, who
Okay.
sent that letter. So that was who I followed up with to get all that information, those documents to them.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stern, there's no other public comment?
All right, thank you, Mr. Cleaver. I will take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Wayne.
I have a first by Mrs. Spinelli, a second by Mr. Wentz on adjournment. Call
Thank
vote.
everyone. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Richard Belts? Is he gone? Mr. David Bradley?
Yes, move to adjourn.
Mr. Nathan Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik? Absent. Mrs. Rita Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers? Absent. Mr. Larry Stern?
Yes, and thank you all for attending and enjoy the summer weather this week.
Thank you.